Chapter 636. There was no absolute thing in the world. Qian Xingwang's awe-inspiring righteousness was destroyed in just half a minute. His persistence was even shorter than Chen Chang's. The content of his confession was more detailed than Chen Chang's, and he even mentioned the names of his 8 generations of ancestors. Stygian Club Vero family Bayforte. Tan Xiao held a cup of hot tea and sat next to the luxurious bed. Although his eyes fell on the sleeping Kong Xia, there wasn't much focus in his eyes. He was no stranger to the name of the Stygian Club. He had previously ordered the Everlasting Feast Hall's people to investigate the Stygian Club, and was well aware of its existence. The Vero family was a member of the Dark Parliament. The entire family had 6 members of the Dark Parliament, and Bayforte was one of them with great power and influence. Qian Xingwang had been loyal to Bayforte for more than 20 years, and was definitely a very capable henchman of Bayforte. It was precisely because Bayforte fancied the Everlasting Feast Hall's product formula that he sent his representative in China, Qian Xingwang, to personally steal it. Tan Xiao didn't plan to go abroad for the time being, but he issued an order to the Everlasting Feast Hall to assassinate Bayforte, without exposing his identity. How long have I slept? Kong Xia woke up from her sleep, and found Tan Xiao sitting on the bedside in a daze. She then asked with a bright smile. Tan Xiao came back to his senses, and looked at the time. He then smilingly said, "It's 12 noon now. You slept for quite a long time. Go wash up. I'll take you to the dining room later." Kong Xia was surprised that she slept for such a long time, but she was more concerned about the result of last night. She quickly asked, "Did you confess everything to Qian Xingwang?" "Yes, he did." Tan Xiao nodded. "Who instigated him to do it?" asked Kong Xia. "A certain foreign force. I've sent someone to remove the mastermind behind the scenes, so this matter has come to an end for the time being," said Tan Xiao. "However, the security force of our magnificent Tang Corporation must continue to be strengthened. I'll give some money to Tai Zhongkue later to register a formal security company to be responsible for forming a brand new security force. After the security company is on the right track, all the security personnel of the magnificent Tang Corp must also go to the security company for comprehensive training." Kong Xia nodded and said, "Our business is getting bigger and bigger in the future, so we're bound to need a lot of security personnel to ensure the safety of our property. If there's anything you need me to do, just let me know." "Okay, go wash up." Tan Xiao patted her shoulder and smiled. After lunch, along with Kong Xia's departure, Tan Xiao took Mo Ao to the Walled Hill Village construction site. Looking at the scene of the construction in full swing, he was quite satisfied with the Long family's efficiency. It didn't take long before he found Long Jingyu, who was having a meeting with the foreman in the shed. "Tan Xiao, why are you here?" Long Jingyu temporarily ended the meeting, and came out with a smile. Tan Xiao directly stated the purpose of his visit. "Southgate Town is the villa complex developed by your family, and the property management company is also established by your family. So I want to ask you clearly, have all the villas in Southgate Town been sold? If they're all sold, is there anyone willing to sell? I'm willing to buy them at 10% above the market price." Long Jingyu thought for a moment before he forced a smile and said, "You personally came here for this matter? If that's the case, I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. All the villas in Southgate Town have been sold out. As for the property management company, I'm not clear about it. If you want to know, just ask Long Xiuyao directly." Tan Xiao forced a smile and shook his head. He took out his mobile and called Long Xiuyao. What he didn't expect was that Long Xiuyao actually told him over the phone that there were several owners in Southgate Town who were ready to sell their properties, and one of them was Tan Xiao's neighbor. "I want all of them," Tan Xiao told Long Xiuyao on the phone, and then hurried back to Southgate Town. He wanted to see Long Xiuyao and ask her to help him meet with those owners. Originally, he intended to buy them at 10% above the market price, but the price quoted by those 3 owners turned out to be slightly lower than the market price. Therefore, aside from the View Building King Villa, Tan Xiao also bought Villa number 10, Villa number 13, and Villa number 14. Finally, Tan Xiao set his eyes on Villa number 11 and Villa number 12. If he could buy these 2 villas, Then the innermost 6 villas in Southgate Town would all become his properties. After completing all the procedures and paying the full amount, Tan Xiao then looked at Long Shuiyao, who came out of the Housing Management Bureau with him and said, "Your property management company should have the contact information of the owners of Villa number 11 and Villa number 12, right? Help me contact them. I'm ready to buy the villas for these 2 days." Long Shuiyao was already very shocked that Tan Xiao had bought 3 villas in one breath. But now, seeing Tan Xiao's eyes also cast on Villa number 11 and Villa number 12, she suddenly became somewhat speechless. For others to be able to buy a villa was already considered to be very powerful, but he on the other hand directly bought several villas. "Tan Xiao, why don't you buy all the villas in the entire Southgate Town? At that time, our property management company will be able to relax and only be responsible for you, a single owner," Long Shuiyao said jokingly. Tan Xiao raised his hand to touch his nose as he said with a smile, "Unfortunately, I don't have that much money at hand, else I would really have this idea. Southgate Town's geographical location is good. If I can rebuild it into a villa, how stylish would that be?" Long Shuiyao was at a loss whether she had to laugh or cry as she said, "You really have this idea?" Tan Xiao said with a smile, "I'm just kidding. If I have that much money, I'll directly invest in other places. However, I'm really not joking with you. I want to buy Villa number 11 and Villa number 12. Help me. If it's done, I'll treat you to a meal." "All right." Long Shuiyao nodded and said. Soon Long Shuiyao contacted the owners of Villa number 11 and number 12 in Southgate Town, and conveyed Tan Xiao's idea to buy the villas to them. When they learned that Tan Xiao wanted to buy it at a premium of 10%, the owner of Villa number 12 happily agreed, but the owner of Villa number 11 hesitated and refused. Back at Southgate Town, Tan Xiao personally visited Villa number 11, and found that it was an old couple who lived there. Tan Xiao expressed his intention and promised them a 20% premium, but he hoped that they would keep it a secret. Eventually, after the old couple learned that Tan Xiao had bought all the surrounding villas, they called their son abroad and finally agreed to sell the villas to Tan Xiao. After everything was settled, Tan Xiao felt relieved. He spent a total of more than 490 million yuan on the 5 villas. Mo Au and the other 10 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall then chose a villa to live in. At the magnificent Tang Corporation's HQ, Andy, who had a child's face and fair skin, wore a very fitting trench coat and white boots as she entered the general manager's office. When she saw Kong Xia, who was reviewing documents on the desk, she immediately asked with a smile, "Boss, what's the matter?" Kong Xia put down the documents in her hand and said with a smile, "Boss called us and told us to go to Southgate Town in half an hour. Also, we need to leave Star City in the next 4 or 5 days to go to Boss's hometown. So hurry up and arrange your work. We'll leave in half an hour." Andy was confused. Going to Boss's hometown? What are we going to do there? Will Boss go with us? Andy was puzzled. Kong Xia nodded with a smile and said mysteriously, "It's a secret for now. You'll know when we get there. Hurry up and arrange your work." "So mysterious," Andy muttered, but she still said with a cheerful smile, "I've been dreaming to go out and play with Boss. Now my dream has finally come true. I'll arrange it now. Just wait for me." "I'll wait for you." Kong Xia couldn't help laughing. Southgate Town. Tan Xiao had already packed his clothes. Just as he came out of his room, he saw Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan standing outside with 2 small suitcases at their feet. Mu Qingping, on the other hand, smiled and exhorted, "You two must not be naughty and obedient when you go out with your master." "Got it." "All right." Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan obediently complied. Tan Xiao said with a smile, "Let's go. Your Aunt Kong Xia and Aunt Andy should be arriving soon." When Tan Xiao came to the courtyard with the 2 children, Kong Xia and Andy had already arrived. Andy was naturally happy to see Tan Xiao. She was also very fond of Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan. Because of the detour, they didn't pass through the Su family village, and directly arrived at the back mountain of the Su family village from another direction. Because of the detour, they didn't pass through the Su family village, and directly arrived at the back mountain of the Su family village from another direction. "Oh, the 3 of you stay here and look after the car. If you want to eat, Go directly to the mountain to buy. We'll be in the mountain for 4 or 5 days. After getting off the car, Tanxio waved to the car that had been following them from behind. When Ao came in, Tanxio ordered. Quickly, Tanxio took the few people into the mountain. Tang Xiaohan was blind, so Tanxio was responsible for carrying him. As night fell, the few of them had arrived at the lake in the valley where they had stayed before. Boss, please tell me, what are we going to do in the deep forest after traveling thousands of miles? I swear to God that I've never climbed a mountain and come to the forest. Andy's physique was very good now, even better than Kong Xia's. But she was still a bit tired. To cultivate. Tanxio originally thought that Kong Xia was a bit amusing to hide it from Andy, so he deliberately mystified her several times. But since they were already here, he didn't want to hide it anymore. Andy was puzzled. Cultivate? Can't we cultivate in Star City? Why do we have to come here to cultivate? Tanxio raised his finger to the starry sky and smilingly said, Now carefully sense it. What's the difference between this place and Star City? Remember to sense it in your cultivation state. Andy was confused, but she still followed Tanxio's instructions and silently circulated the true essence energy inside her body to absorb the world's spiritual qi. Chapter 637. Water like starlight sprinkled all over the earth, illuminating the sparkling lake surface. The shadows of the trees on the lakeside were reflected in the lake, and a faint plum fragrance came from not far away. Andy didn't understand what Tanxio meant, but she listened to Tanxio's words. As time passed by, she faintly felt a cool sensation on her skin. Huh! Andy, who had just closed her eyes for a while, opened them and said in shock, The effect of cultivating here is much better than in Star City, boss. I can feel that the heaven and earth spiritual qi here is not as thin as before. It's several times richer. You're right, Tanxio said with a smile. The heaven and earth spiritual qi here is several times richer than in Star City. Therefore, cultivating in this deep mountain forest is several times faster than cultivating in Star City. Besides, the destination I'm going to take you to is even more beneficial for you. Andy's eyes sparkled as she blinked and said, I know you're the best to us, boss. You see, Enin and Little Han are so cute, and I'm also so cute. Boss, please tell Enin and Little Han to call me Master's wife later. In China, Master's wife seems to be called Master's wife. Pfft. Kong Xia couldn't help but burst into laughter. Tanxio, on the other hand, let out a wry smile and rolled his eyes at Andy. He didn't expect that Kong Xia's train of thought was so jumpy. They were just talking about other topics, yet she suddenly jumped to the topic of the relationship between men and women. Let's get something to eat first, Tanxio said as he took out the barbecue grill, charcoal, iron tongs, and barbecue seasoning from his interspatial ring. He also bought some meat and vegetables in advance. When he saw Kong Xia and Andy's dumbfounded and bewildered expressions, he immediately forced a smile and said, Don't you two know how to barbecue? We don't. The two women shook their heads and said in unison. Tanxio forced a wry smile inwardly as he waved and said, Then forget it. Just wait to eat. He was responsible for the barbecue. After igniting the charcoal, he put the skewered meat and vegetables on the barbecue grill. As time passed by, he put all kinds of seasoning on it. In the end, after his hard work, the two women and two children ate until their mouths were full of oil, and they were satisfied. After eating and drinking their fill, they had enough rest. As a result, Tanxio put everything back into the space ring, and continued to lead them on their way. After another 2 hours, they finally arrived at the outskirts of the stone forest. After Tanxio's reminder, they entered the stone forest. Master, the heaven and earth spiritual qi here is very rich. As soon as they entered the center of the stone forest, Guyin, who had the highest cultivation among them, exclaimed in surprise. Tanxio praised, Enin is pretty good. You actually noticed it as soon as you came in. Look at this spring. It's the spring of the earth vein spirit spring. The reason I brought you here is to let you cultivate in the spring. I can guarantee that you will all improve by leaps and bounds. Tang Xiaohan hesitated for a moment, and then asked, Master, although you taught me the positions of the acupoints in my body, the routes of the meridians, and the routes of the cultivation method, I can't even feel the qi in my body. Can I still cultivate together? It doesn't matter if you can't sense the existence of qi now, replied Tan Xiao without hesitation. I believe you'll be able to sense it soon as you follow the method I taught you in the spirit spring. All right. Tang Xiaohan nodded heavily. Tan Xiao looked at the four people and said, take off all your clothes and soak in the spirit spring. Afterward, start cultivating according to the cultivation technique I taught you. Ah! Kong Xia looked at Tan Xiao with a surprised expression, whereas Andy exclaimed in surprise. Her delicate and cute face turned red. Even Gu Yin became a bit bashful. It's not that I want to take advantage of you, but I must stay here to ensure that you won't have any problems in your cultivation. Tan Xiao forced a smile. You don't know the dangers of soaking in the spirit spring to cultivate now, but you'll understand it when the time comes. Remember, it'll be very painful during the cultivation, so you must endure it. Also, once you notice that your meridians are swollen and the pain is severe, you must immediately stop cultivating and leave the spirit spring. Kong Xia and Andy looked at each other and finally nodded in silence. Kong Xia was well aware of Andy's thoughts. Ever since Andy met Tan Xiao, she had been talking about Tan Xiao all day long. Even a fool could see that Andy liked Tan Xiao very much. Of course, she wouldn't have been so generous if Andy only liked him. After all, her body had been occupied by Tan Xiao, and she was Tan Xiao's woman. But the key point was that she was perfectly aware that Tang Xiao would never come with only one woman. There were many women who covetously eyed Tan Xiao, and their conditions were extremely perfect. If Tan Xiao had another woman in the future, it would be better to let Andy become that woman. At least, she and Andy were like sisters, and they could get along well with each other. Take it off. Kong Xia nodded to Andy and began to take off her clothes. When a snow-white tender body was completely naked in front of Tan Xiao. Even though Tan Xiao had explored this tender body more than once, his lower abdomen was still hot and a faint impulse was raised. Andy's performance also surprised Tan Xiao. She was just 10 seconds slower than Kong Xia, yet she had already taken off all her clothes. Although her delicate and lovely face was a bit shy, she desperately plucked up the courage to stand in front of Tan Xiao and said, Boss, you've seen me naked. I'm your woman later. If you don't want me, I'll cry and hang myself. Cough cough. Fast forward. Tan Xiao felt that he had turned hard. He endured the impulse and just uttered those two words. His eyes inadvertently swept over Andy's golden triangle, and his heart was fiercely shaken. White tiger. Tan Xiao had only heard that there were women in this world who were white tigers, but never once did he expect that Andy was one of them. To control his desire, he hurriedly turned around, waved his hand and said, Hurry up and enter the spirit spring to cultivate. Enin little Han, hurry up. Plop. The sound of entering the water was heard 4 times in a row. Only then did Tan Xiao suppress the desire inside his heart. He turned around to look at the 4 people and said, Enin little Han, you two must hold on to the blue stone on the edge. This spirit spring is very deep. Once you let go, you may fall inside. Kong Xiao's shoulder was exposed outside, and her fingers stirred up a series of splashes in the spirit spring. She then said with a smile, Did you bring a rope, boss? I think you should tie Enin and little Han's bodies with a rope, and then tie the other end of the rope to the nearby rocks. That way they won't sink. Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment. He immediately patted his forehead and quickly took out 2 ropes from his interspatial ring. He bought these ropes when he was in Jingmen Island. He threw them into his interspatial ring and didn't use them much, but now he had to use them. Time flew by in a flash. 5 days had passed in the blink of an eye. In these 5 days, Kong Xia and Andy's cultivation had advanced by leaps and bounds, especially Andy. Her cultivation had broken through to the early stage of foundation establishment, whereas Kong Xia had broken through to the late stage of qi refining. Tang Xiaohan had also sensed the existence of qi through Tan Xiao's help, and entered the qi refining stage after cultivating. Boom! A layer of qi waves spread in all directions inside the stone forest as a thumb-sized golden core emerged from Gu Yin's abdomen and floated above her head, bathing in starlight. This is... Kong Xia and Andy exchanged dismayed glances with shocked expressions on their faces. Standing at the side, Tan Xiu's eyes were fixated on Gu Yin's golden core. He could clearly sense that the heaven and earth spiritual qi from all directions swarmed over like a tide after the golden core broke out of her body. "Take it back!" Tan Xiu shouted in a low voice. Upon hearing it, Gu Yin immediately retracted the golden core back into her body. She opened her eyes and was pleasantly surprised as she said, "I've broken through to the golden core stage, Master. I can even release my golden core outside my body." "You mean, you're not allowed to release your golden core again in the future," said Tan Xiu solemnly. "Unless you encounter a powerful enemy and are about to be killed by them. Then release your golden core, and explode it to perish together with the enemy. Got it?" Gu Yin nodded with a half-understanding expression. She hesitated for a moment and then asked, "But why, Master?" "It's very dangerous for cultivators to separate their golden core from their bodies," said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. "If someone wants to seize your golden core while it's out of your body, they can easily take it away. Your own control over it will be much weaker than external forces. Once your golden core is taken away, it will be very harmful to you. You may even lose your life because of it." Gu Yin's small face turned pale and she quickly said, "I'll listen to you, Master." Tan Xiu nodded. His eyes shifted to the spirit spring and he immediately sighed inwardly. After 5 days of absorption by the 4 people, the spirit spring had dropped by half a foot. This kind of spiritual energy from the earth vein was extremely precious, and it would have a good effect even if consumed. Soaking in the spirit spring for cultivation was considered a reckless waste of God's gift. However, he didn't care. The amount of spirit spring was very large, and the number of cultivators in society was very small. With the existence of this spirit spring, it would be more than enough for him to train an army of cultivators. Last time, Tan Xiu didn't bring any jades with him, so he didn't arrange an array. One of the purposes of his visit this time was to cover this stone forest with an array. It was better to be safe than sorry. If a cultivator came here and successfully entered the stone forest, the secret of the spirit spring would be leaked. Let's go. Let's leave this stone forest first. Chapter 638. After stepping out of the stone forest, Tan Xiu arranged 3 layers of arrays in the periphery. Illusion array, star transposition array, and defense array. The illusion array could confuse the eyes of others and make them unable to discover the existence of the stone forest. If anyone rashly entered, they would be sent out by the star transposition array. The innermost defense array was specifically used to deal with cultivators. Unless one was a golden core stage cultivator, it would be very difficult to break through the defense array and enter. The 3 layers of arrays were interlocked with each other, ingeniously and gradually increasing in power. "It's done." Tan Xiu wiped the sweat on his forehead. It took him 2 to 3 hours to engrave the array pattern, and it was quite strenuous for him to arrange it with such a high concentration of mental energy. It could be said that the arrangement of these 3 layers of arrays was the most profound and powerful array he had arranged after returning to Earth. Kong Xia took out a handkerchief from her carry-on bag and carefully wiped the sweat on Tan Xiu's forehead. Then she asked with concern, "Are you all right?" Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "It's just that I've consumed a lot of my mental energy, but it's nothing serious. However, you must keep in mind that you must never tell anyone about the existence of the spirit spring, except for the few of us. The location of this earth vein spirit spring is a treasure land, and will suffer huge losses in the future once it's known by others." "All right." Kong Xia and Andy nodded, and even Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan quickly complied. In the dead of night, sparkling sparks flickered at the foot of the mountain as cold air raged around the 2 SUVs. However, several stalwart figures were standing beside the cars, constantly looking at the mountain peak under the moonlight. 2 kilometers away from them, Zhao Donghe was standing on the 2nd floor of a house behind the Su family village, observing the people beside the 2 SUVs with binoculars. There were more than a dozen policemen in police uniforms beside him. The most eye-catching thing was the bulging bags on their waists, which were obviously equipped with guns. "Chief Zhao, it's been 5 days. What do they want?" A young policeman with a tired face asked while yawning. Zhao Donghe glanced at him and said, "Are you tired?" Being a policeman requires the spirit of being able to bear hardships and endure hardships. Back when I was in the criminal police unit, let alone 5 days, I even had to stay there for half a month. Those people were acting suspiciously, and it was highly possible that they had ill intentions. So, no matter how cold or tired he is, we have to continue monitoring him. The young policeman looked a bit embarrassed as he repeatedly nodded and said, Yes, yes, yes. Chief Zhao, you're right. I'm just curious as to what they're trying to do. They've actually stayed in the back mountain for 5 whole days. Zhao Donghe said, the longer they stay, the bigger their scheme will be. All right, I'm going down to take a nap. If you find anything unusual, wake me up immediately. The young policeman took the binoculars and watched Zhao Donghe leave a few steps. Then he picked up the binoculars and continued to keep watch. Just as Zhao Donghe was about to go down the ladder, the young policeman's expression suddenly changed, and he hurriedly shouted, There's a situation, Chief Zhao. Zhao Donghe was taken aback for a moment. Then, he strode back and grabbed the binoculars to observe. That's at the bottom of the mountain. After spending a few hours, Tan Xiu's group finally came out of the mountain. He looked at Mo Ao's group of 3 and asked with a smile, You've worked hard. Did anything unexpected happen in the past few days? There are policemen hiding in the dark to protect us, boss, said Mo Ao. Nothing unexpected happened. On the first day after you entered the mountain, some nearby villagers came here. But then the police came and no one came again. The police? Are there policemen nearby? Asked Tan Xiu with a frown. They're in the village 2 or 3 kilometers away. Mo Ao nodded and said, We've observed them. They are observing us with binoculars. In order to figure out their identity, Biao Weng took the opportunity to go to town to buy food and quietly lurked there. He found out the identity of those policemen. They are from the Qinghai County Public Security Bureau. Tan Xiu nodded and said, They should have received a report from the masses and thought that you're acting suspiciously here. Forget it. Let's just leave since it's a misunderstanding. The 2 cars started. Just as they arrived near the Su family village, they were stopped by 4 or 5 police cars. Tan Xiu didn't rush to get off the car. He looked at the policeman in front, and saw Zhao Donghe hurriedly coming out with 2 policemen. Tan Xiu raised his brows and opened the door to get off. Tan Xiu, what's going on with you? A forced smile hung on Zhao Donghe's face as he quickly took out a cigarette. Tan Xiu took the cigarette from Zhao Donghe and said with a smile, Chief Zhao, if my guess is correct, we should have made a mistake. I just heard from my bodyguards that the police have been secretly protecting us for the past few days. As a matter of fact, I brought my friends and family to this mountain for camping. But we got lost in the back of the mountain, so we had to play and wander around. It took us a few days to get out. Zhao Donghe was dumbfounded. Never in his dreams did he expect that the Public Security Bureau would receive a report from the masses, saying that there were very suspicious bad guys in the vicinity. He even put down his other things and squatted in this freezing cold weather for 4 or 5 days, only to make a mistake. He looked at Kong Xia and Andy, as well as Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan. The corner of his mouth twitched a few times. He really didn't know what to say. Although Kong Xia and Andy gave him a breathtaking feeling, he believed that Tan Xiu wouldn't do anything bad since he brought a woman and a child with him. Cough, cough. Since it's a misunderstanding, then we don't need to stay here to suffer. Tan Xiu, if you come to play again later, please inform us in advance. Else, if we receive a report from the masses, we'll have to. Tan Xiu could hear a bit of embarrassment and resentment in Zhao Donghe's tone. He immediately looked apologetic and said with a smile, I'm really sorry, Chief Zhao. I just wanted to make my family and friends happy, and never thought that this misunderstanding would happen. I heard that the Public Security Bureau's kitchen is dilapidated, and should have been repaired long ago. How about this? I'll donate 500,000 yuan as a token of my appreciation. This, Zhao Donghe's heart was as clear as a mirror. Tan Xiu was expressing goodwill to him, and using this method to apologize. Saying that the Public Security Bureau's kitchen was dilapidated was simply a nonsensical excuse. However, Tan Xiu's attitude made him have a whole new level of respect for him. He secretly praised Tan Xiu's conduct and finally agreed. Because he had to leave. Under the escort of 4 or 5 police cars, Tan Xiao and his entourage arrived at the highway intersection. After saying goodbye to each other, they then rushed back to Star City. It was already early in the morning when they returned to Star City. After Tan Xiao sent Mo Ao to send Kong Xia and Andy back, he personally drove back to Southgate Town. Although Gu Yin and Tang Xiaohan had slept for a few hours on the road, Tan Xiao still told them to go back to their rooms to rest. Tan Xiao, a boss who claimed to be Yuan Zhengxian, came to our house the day before yesterday. He said that he wanted to call you, but your phone has been turned off. I told him that you went out of town, and he said to wait for you to come back and contact him as soon as possible. Mu Qingping waited until Tan Xiao went downstairs and hurriedly said. Tan Xiao's eyes lit up as he immediately nodded and said, I got it. I'll go find him after breakfast. Mu Qingping said with a smile, I've already bought the plane ticket to Saipan. It'll be on the 16th of January at noon. Tan Xiao pondered for a moment and asked, Why don't you stay at home for a few days? Mu Qingping said with a smile, This is my home and 9 Dragons Island is also my home. It's been some time since I've returned to China, and I don't feel at ease letting others take care of things there for a long time. Tan Xiao said, Since the plane ticket has been booked, then it's up to you. I'll send 2 bodyguards to go with you this time. Don't refuse. Your safety is very important, and I must ensure that you arrive at 9 Dragons Island smoothly. Mu Qingping's heart warmed, and she swallowed back the words she wanted to refuse. After Tan Xiao finished his breakfast, his mobile had been charged to 20%. After taking the charger and leaving, he called Yuan Zhengxian and arranged to meet him at a small electronics factory in Star City. Here. As Tan Xiao arrived at the entrance of the small electronics factory, he saw Yuan Zhengxian waving at him from the direction of the security room. After parking the car at the side, he got off the car and said with a smile, Uncle Yuan, I went out of town temporarily and just came back early this morning. You didn't wait long, right? Yuan Zhengxian said with a smile, It's all right. I've conveyed your idea of needing scientific and technological talents to those researchers in advance. They didn't immediately agree, because they don't know the product direction you want to research. Now everyone is inside and they want to talk to you. No problem, Tan Xiao said. I'll have to trouble Uncle Yuan to lead the way. After driving into the electronics factory, Tan Xiao learned from Yuan Zhengxian that the secret research lab was located here. The products the researchers had researched had been completed, so most of the security forces had been removed. Although it was called an electronics factory in name, it was actually just a cover-up. Boss. At the entrance of a 3-story building, 2 uniformed security guards saluted and called out. Yuan Zhengxian nodded and led Tan Xiao inside. They then stopped in front of an elevator installed in one of the rooms. Fingerprint verification, retina verification, password verification and work card swiping. After a series of verification, the 2 entered the elevator and Yuan Zhengxian directly pressed the -2 button. On the 2nd floor underground. After the 2 entered, a huge space appeared in front of Tan Xiao. The environment inside was almost the same as those in the movies, with all kinds of high-tech instruments and molten iron walls. It looked like an impregnable fortress. Except for the sealed room at the innermost side, dozens of researchers were sitting in front of computer desks and playing with their computers, some were reading magazines, and some were playing with their mobile phones as if they were playing mobile games. Clap, clap. Yuan Zhengxian clapped his hands and said aloud, Everyone, please stop what you're doing. Let me introduce you to someone. This is Tan Xiao, a famous figure in Star City. I think you should know his identity. Star City Chinese Medical Hospital's young divine doctor. An old man with a head full of white hair and a white coat came to greet him. He adjusted the frame of his glasses and extended his hand with a smile. I'm Moe, the director of the Research Institute. You can call me Director Mo or Professor Mo. Chapter 639. Tan Xiao politely shook hands with Moe and smilingly said, I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time, Professor Mo. I've consulted Uncle Yuan before, and he's full of praises for you. Moe glanced at Yuan Zhengxian and smilingly said, I'll break his legs if he dares to speak ill of me. However, the products that he wanted to develop had already been developed, and they had achieved good results. Now that he doesn't need us anymore, he wants to push us away. We're all not happy about it. Upon seeing the awkward expression on Yuan Jingshuan's face, Tan Xiu quickly said, "You're wrong. Professor Mo, Uncle Yuan and I are like a family. He introduced you to me, so how can it be considered as pushing you away? In fact, I know everyone's concerns. You're afraid that I'll be too harsh, or the direction of my research, as well as the amount of funds I can invest. Of course, there's also the issue of your salary. The reason I came here this time is to discuss these matters with everyone." Upon hearing Tan Xiu mention the main topic, Yuan Zhengxian immediately said, "You guys talk first. I still have some important things to deal with. Tan Xiu, let's have lunch together at noon." "All right." Tan Xiu nodded. As Yuan Zhengxian left, he looked at Moe again and said, "Professor Mo, I just guessed some of your concerns, right?" "That's right. What you said is exactly our concern," said Moe. "If you can dispel our concerns, maybe we can work for you," said Moe. Tan Xiu pulled a chair and motioned everyone to sit down. Then he said, "First, I'll talk about the direction of my research. I'm sure you all know about Earth's space gravity. What I want to research is similar to a buoyant aircraft, which I'll name as a frisbee for the time being. This frisbee can allow people to stand on it and fly, and it can be popularized in today's society." Frisbee, Moe and dozens of researchers wore strange expressions. They looked at Tan Xiu as though they were looking at an alien. They had seen the thing described by Tan Xiu before, but it was in a foreign sci-fi movie. "Mr. Tang, are you kidding me?" Moe exchanged glances with the people in charge of the research institutes around him, then said with a serious face, "I'm not joking." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "What I said is what I think. Scientific research products needed to be filled with fantasies. For example, decades ago, who would have thought that maglev trains would exist in this world? Take the airplane as an example. On December 17, 1903, the Wright brothers of the M Nation achieved the first powered flight in human history. Before this day was recorded in the annals of history, who would have believed that there would be an airplane in this world? And it became one of the main means of transportation for people today?" Moe and the dozens of researchers fell silent. They finally realized that Tan Xiu did not seem to be joking. However, this kind of whimsical idea made them secretly laugh bitterly. "Tan Xiu, if you are an investor, we should listen to your arrangements. But the frisbee you mentioned is too difficult to study. The researchers here are mainly experts in the research of thermal weapons. Although they have done some research on gravity, it is not very in-depth. Just from your description, I can tell that there is a need for motivation, and at the same time, we have to avoid the most important problem, which is traffic. To put it bluntly, we are not up to the task," Moe said solemnly. Tan Xiu said, "This problem is easy to solve. I'll tell you later. Let's talk about my attitude towards the research institute. I will send people to supervise and understand the progress of the research, but I will not interfere with the research. In terms of salary, you will receive an increase of 50% on the basis of your original salary. As for the research funding, I can provide it continuously. As long as you dare to ask, I dare to give it to you." Moe knitted his brows and asked, "Mr. Tang, it's a brand new topic that's extremely difficult to research. Perhaps the experiment of this project will fail dozens, or even hundreds of times. Do you have the financial foundation to do so? Can you take responsibility for what you just said?" Tan Xiu confidently said, "You all work in Star City, so you should know about the Magnificent Tang Corporation. To tell you the truth, I'm the big boss of the Magnificent Tang Corporation. Do you think I have enough funds to provide you with the research?" "The Magnificent Tang Corporation?" Moe revealed a shocked expression, and a few of the other researchers even cried out involuntarily. They had been working in Star City all these years, so how could they not know about the Magnificent Tang Corporation? At present, among the companies in the entire Star City, the one that was developing the fastest and earning the most money was none other than the Magnificent Tang Corporation. Moe took a deep breath and seriously said, "Then let's go back to the first question." Tan Xiu smiled and said, Professor Mo, I've understood a truth since I was young. Money is not omnipotent, but it's the closest thing to omnipotence. As the saying goes, money makes the world go round. As long as I have money, I can buy the materials you need for your research with money. If you need any experts in any field, I can poach them with money. I heard a sentence a few days ago that as long as you have money, you can even get a nuclear warhead. Moe abruptly got up and stared at Tan Xiao asking, I want to know how much is the initial investment, Mr. Tang? I also want to know how much you need for the initial investment after the project starts. Tan Xiao asked back. Moe was stumped by the question. He immediately whispered to the other researchers. After a long while, he sat back in front of Tan Xiao and said word by word, if the initial investment is less than 9 digits, we won't dare to go all out. Tan Xiao slapped his thigh and said in a loud voice, I'll take out 10 digits for the initial investment. You can ask me again when you've used it up. 10 digits? 1 billion? Moe and the dozens of researchers were shocked by Tan Xiao's big investment. Their previous project was also the biggest research result they had done so far, and the research cost before it was completed was only 200 to 300 million yuan. The amount of investment proposed by Tan Xiao was only the initial investment. It could still be added later. Are you sure? Moe's voice was a bit shaky. I, Tan Xiao, have always been a man of my word, said Tan Xiao without hesitation. If you don't believe me, I can set up a public account for the research funds, which will be managed by Professor Mo and me. Once the account is set up, I'll immediately transfer 1 billion yuan. Moe and the other researchers exchanged dismayed glances. They could hear the firmness and determination of Tan Xiao from Tan Xiao's words. After half a minute of silence, Moe suddenly got up and solemnly said, I, Moe, have decided to participate in the research of the Aeroglider project. I'll never stop as long as I can move before the project is completed. I, Wang Xian, have also decided to participate. Another research professor in a white coat got up and said, I'll also participate. Me too. Dozens of researchers stood up one after another to express their stance. Tan Xiao's attitude and the investment of such a large amount of funds gave them great courage. Since the person throwing the money was not afraid, why should they, the researchers, be afraid? Furthermore, once the project proposed by Tan Xiao was completed, and the Aeroglider could be popularized among the people, they would all be great contributors. Even if they couldn't be immortalized in history, they could still win a lifetime of praise. I'm very glad that all of you can join us, said Tan Xiao with a smile. I'm going to buy a plot of land in Shanghai in the near future, and set up a large industrial park where the magnificent Tang Corporation will research and develop other products. At that time, I'll plan an independent area and build a brand new research institute. After the project is completed, you can move there to continue the research and development. It's up to you to decide how to arrange your family when the time comes. The magnificent Tang Corporation will provide the money and manpower to serve you well. I'm afraid that you'll have to stay here for the next year, but I'll secretly transfer a group of security forces to be responsible for the safety of this place. At the same time, I'll also set up a service team to meet your needs as much as possible, whether it's in terms of daily life or the required scientific research materials. Understood. Moe and the dozens of researchers had nothing else to say at this moment except to agree. Tan Xiao's plan was very thoughtful and perfect. They had a sense of approval toward this new boss from the bottom of their hearts. Shortly after, Tan Xiao talked with the dozens of researchers for a long time, and talked about all the problems, and everyone was very satisfied with the results. Immediately after, Moe and several experts and professors from the research institute accompanied Tan Xiao to the lower 3 floors to visit their real laboratory. In the laboratory, Tan Xiao saw a lot of high-tech instruments. He was familiar with high-tech products before, but he didn't know much about these high-tech instruments. After Moe's explanation, Tan Xiao found that technology was indeed a magical existence. Through the complementary effects of physics and chemistry, many novel things could be produced. Is it very dangerous to carry out scientific research? Asked Tan Xiao after the visit. Research, especially the research of special high-tech products, such as the thermal weapons we've been researching before, how can it not be dangerous? Moe forced a smile. We've been following Yuan Zhengxian for more than a decade, and 3 of our colleagues have died due to accidents. 6 of them were injured and had to leave. Just 5 or 6 months ago, one of our colleagues was electrocuted to death because he touched a high-voltage electricity. Alas, people like us. How can we not deal with electric currents? Who can survive after being hit by an electric current? Chapter 640. Electric current? Tanxiu stared blankly and immediately shook his head inwardly. High-voltage current might be fatal to ordinary people, but it didn't pose much of a threat to an immortal cultivator like him. Which powerful cultivator had not been struck by lightning when they crossed their tribulation? Back when I crossed my immortal tribulation, the 99 heavenly tribulation was mighty and powerful. But what was the result? Didn't I endure it? I even used the power of lightning to temper my body, and finally transformed it into an immortal physique. As Tanxiu thought about it, his expression suddenly moved. Lightning to temper my body? There were no high-tech products in the immortal world. Unless the natural environment changed, the only way to see lightning was to trigger the lightning in the sky, or use items like the lightning talisman. But he was on Earth now. Everything was lacking on Earth, but there was no lack of electricity. If he used electric currents of sufficient power to temper his body, would he be able to make his physique even stronger? As Tanxiu thought up to there, his eyes lit up and he even felt a bit excited inside. He turned to look at Moe and said in a deep voice, Professor Mo, I'll set up an internal fund after the research project is officially launched. Every scientific research expert who dies in a research project will have their family members compensated with tens of millions of funds, while the injured will be compensated with 5 million according to the severity of their injuries. Additionally, the magnificent Tang Corporation will be responsible for taking care of the elderly in their old age, and the company will be responsible for raising them into adults if they have children. Moe was moved by Tanxiu's words. Though he was nearly 60 years old, he still solemnly bowed deeply to Tanxiu. You don't need to do this, Professor Mo. Tanxiu quickly supported him. Moe shook his head and said, Mr. Tang, no, it should be boss. On behalf of not only myself, but also all of my colleagues in the Research Institute, thank you for solving all of our worries. It's what I should do, said Tanxiu. After saying that, he immediately changed the topic and asked, Professor Mo, what's the maximum power of the high-voltage current in this lab? Moe didn't understand why Tanxiu would suddenly ask this question, but he still answered truthfully, 100 kilowatts. This is already the highest power generator in the country. Originally, there was a 120 kilowatt generator set overseas. Yuan Zhengxian once wanted to help us import it, but our laboratory didn't need such a high power generator set, so we didn't let him do it. Tanxiu asked again, there should be a safety switch in the laboratory, right? Moe smiled bitterly and said, there is indeed a safety brake. If the safety brake hadn't suddenly broken last time, that colleague wouldn't have. Tanxiu nodded to show that he understood. He really wanted to test how much electric current he could withstand, but because he was not familiar with the scientific research experts in the laboratory, and there was also the safety switch, it was not convenient for him to test it here. At noon, Tanxiu left the research institute. As soon as he walked out of the electronics factory, he saw a black Audi parked outside. Yuan Zhengxian was smoking beside the car door. How did it go? Upon seeing Tanxiu drive out, Yuan Zhengxian immediately greeted him, and asked with a beaming smile, Money makes the world go round. Tanxiu nodded and said, This sentence is the same for everyone. Also, I'd like to thank Uncle Yuan for parting with me. Later, when I make a lot of money from the products I've researched, I'll definitely treat you to a good drink. Yuan Zhengxian was surprised and said, Did those scientific research experts really accept your whimsical idea? Tanxiu made a gesture of counting money and repeated, Uncle Yuan, didn't I just say it? Money makes the world go round. Yuan Zhengxian suddenly understood. He was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh as he said, That's right. No one is a saint. You can't live without money. Let's go. I've booked the presidential suite of the Long's dining hall. Let's go have a drink. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile. He suddenly realized that every time he returned to Star City, he would always go to the presidential suite of the Long's dining hall. When he bought the 5 villas, he invited Chu Yuan and Shui Yu to the banquet in the Long's dining hall. Thinking about the two of them, Tan Xiu was somewhat helpless. Chu Yuan was a resourceful guy with a meticulous mind and knew the ways of the world. He could be regarded as a wise man even in today's era. Shui Yu, on the other hand, looked cold and aloof on the surface, yet she was as warm as jade and had a bit of otherworldly flavor. She was a bit similar to Gu Yan. What made him helpless was that despite Chu Yuan's superhuman wisdom, he still faintly guarded against him. As for Shui Yu, she was still entangled in whether he had really seen her face or not. Both of them are hard to deal with. Tan Xiu couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Seeing that Tan Xiu was a bit absent-minded, Yuan Zhengxian said with a smile, "What are you staring at? Don't tell me you don't want to accompany your Uncle Yuan for a drink?" Sobering up from his daze, Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "Nope. I was wondering how Uncle Yuan knew that I still have several bottles of God's nectar in the trunk of my car." Yuan Zhengshuan's brows pricked as he suddenly chuckled and said, "Hee hee, Tan Xiu, I've given so many of my research experts to you. Shouldn't you show some appreciation? Don't mention money, that's too vulgar. I think God's nectar is pretty good. How about giving 8 to 10 boxes of it to your Uncle Yuan?" A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth as he said, "I'll send 20 boxes of God's nectar to Uncle Yuan's place by tonight at the latest. I also promise you that you can call Kong Xia at any time when you finish drinking. She'll immediately send someone to deliver it to you." How generous! Yuan Zhengxian was overjoyed and gave a thumbs up to Tan Xiu. Immediately after, the two of them drove separately to the Long's dining hall. On the way, Tan Xiu dialed Mo A's number, who had been staying nearby. He ordered him to immediately buy the generator set, and requested the higher the power, the better. Ring ring, ring. Inside the presidential suite of the Long's dining hall, Tan Xiu and Yuan Zhengxian, who were drinking and chatting, were suddenly disturbed by the urgent ringtone of a mobile phone. Tan Xiu gave Yuan Zhengxian an apologetic look as he took out his mobile and looked at the caller ID. Then he gestured to Yuan Zhengxian, got up and walked to the side to pick up the phone. "Old brother Xiao, is there something you need from me?" Xiao Mingzhen's urgent voice came out of the phone. "Tan Xiu, something happened to Miao Wentong." Tan Xiu's complexion changed as he quickly asked, "What happened to him?" Xiao Mingzhen said, "I don't know the specific reason. Miao Wentong's assistant just called for help. The location is Longquan Bay in Kana's west." "Old brother Xiao, where are you now?" Tan Xiu asked with all seriousness. "Blue City," said Xiao Mingzhen. Tan Xiu said, "Old brother Xiao, wait for me at Blue City Airport. I'll immediately bring some people to meet you there. Since old brother Miao is in danger, we must save him." "That's right, contact the other party again and ask clearly what the reason is." "All right," Xiao Mingzhen replied and directly hung up the phone. Tan Xiu put away his mobile as he quickly came to Yuan Zhengshuan's front and said, "Uncle Yuan, I'm afraid I can't accompany you to drink anymore. A friend of mine is in danger, so I must hurry up. I'll come back to apologize to you after I've dealt with the matter there." Yuan Zhengxian was perfectly aware that Tan Xiu wouldn't talk nonsense. Tan Xiu had also saved his wife and son, so he naturally knew that saving people was like fighting a fire. Therefore he immediately said, "Tan Xiu, is there anything I can help you with?" "My friend has an accident in Kanas," said Tan Xiu. Yuan Zhengxian stared blankly for a moment. He then shook his head and said with a forced smile, "Then I can't do anything. I don't have anything in the western region. Wait a minute." Yuan Zhengshuan's words were halfway through when he suddenly grabbed his mobile. He quickly found a phone number and quickly called the other party. After exchanging a few words, he hung up the phone and looked at Tan Xiu saying, "Write down this phone number. His name is Jia Weili, a former comrade in arms of mine. We haven't contacted each other for several years, but I still have his contact information. I just told him on the phone to call him directly when you arrive in Kanas. He'll personally pick you up. Thank you, Uncle Yuan." Tan Xiu quickly wrote down the number. He then grabbed his coat and rushed outside. He even called Mo, who had just left, to come back and rushed to Blue City at lightning speed. On the way, he also made a few phone calls to his parents, Kongxia, and the director of the Research Institute, MOE, Blue City Airport. After Tan Xiao arrived with Mo and 10 others, he saw Xiao Mingjin and his 6 bodyguards in the departure lounge. "Old brother Xiao, have you contacted them again?" Tan Xiao quickly asked. Xiao Mingjin forced a smile and said, "I've contacted them again." Brother Miao's assistant said that she didn't know. After she and her 2 bodyguards were arranged at Longquan Bay in Kanas, Brother Miao left with a group of people. But 2 days later, Brother Miao fled back alone. After he saw his assistant, he said my name due to his serious injuries and directly fainted. He hasn't woken up until now. Tan Xiao realized the seriousness of his gaffe and quickly said, "Have we bought the tickets?" "After I received the information you sent, I booked the tickets for all 12 of you," said Xiao Mingjin. "There are still 2.5 hours left before the departure." 2.5 hours? It's too long. Tan Xiao dialed his aunt, Tang Min's number, and asked her to help arrange a plane. Only 7 or 8 minutes later, the person in charge of Blue City Airport personally arrived and informed Tan Xiao and the others to wait for half an hour. Half an hour later, a plane that had yet to take off would take them to the west. Tan Xiao knew that the redeployment of the route, as well as the communication from all sides, and even the refueling of the plane and a series of other things would take time. Therefore, he endured and waited even though he was anxious. Miao Wentong was his friend and also his business partner. Miao Wentong had helped him before, and he had always remembered this favor. 4:20 p.m. The plane took off from Blue City Airport and headed to the west. After arriving at the West Airport, everyone had a transfer and finally arrived at Kanas Airport at 9:50 p.m. Chapter 641. As the group of 19 people stepped out of the Kanas Airport's exit, Tan Xiao dialed the number given by Yuan Zhengxian. His voice was picked up and a deep voice came out of the phone. "I'm Jie Weili. Who's this?" "I'm Tan Xiao." Tan Xiao directly introduced himself. "Mr. Tang, the old platoon leader has instructed me on the phone. I'm waiting for you outside now," said Jie Weili. Did you just come out of the airport? Nearly 20 people? I think I saw you." As his voice faded away, a bearded middle-aged man appeared in front of Tan Xiao. There was a scar on his glabella, and he had a burly figure like a bear. Behind him, there were 2 young men who looked like tigers and tigers. "Are you Tan Xiao, Mr. Tang?" Tan Xiao hung up the phone. He looked at Jie Weili and nodded, saying, "I'm Tan Xiao. Thank you for picking us up so late." Jie Weili shook his head and smilingly said, "The old platoon leader's friends are also my friends. Welcome to Kanas. There are 5 SUVs parked outside." Tan Xiao gently nodded. After introducing Xiao Mingjin to Jie Weili, the group of people quickly left. After they came outside, everyone got on the cars. The drivers of the 5 SUVs also stayed behind due to Tan Xiao's request. In the front SUV, Tan Xiao and Jie Weili sat in the back seats, with Mo driving and Xiao Mingjin sitting in the front passenger seat. "Jie Weili, we have an urgent matter and need to rush to Longquan Bay as soon as possible. We're not familiar with the road conditions here, so we'll have to trouble you to show us the way." Jie Weili could tell that these people were not simple through the identity of Tan Xiao and the others. Therefore he happily said, "No problem. It'll take about 3.5 hours to get to Longquan Bay from here. We can get there before 12:30 p.m. Tan Xiao nodded silently. He could sense a valiant aura from Jie Weili. Even though the people here were valiant, Tan Xiao was very familiar with the aura on Jie Weili. It was the aura of death left behind by a murderer. Therefore he hesitated and asked, "Jie Weili, since you can get 5 Wrangler SUVs in such a short time, I believe your identity is not ordinary. May I ask, what business do you do?" Jie Weili laughed and said, "Jinquang." Xiao Mingjin, who was in the front passenger seat, suddenly said, "As far as I know, there shouldn't be any gold mines in Kanas, right? Other than animal husbandry, it seemed like the tourism industry was more developed here. I've been to Kanas once. The geographical environment here is very beautiful, and there are many lakes. It's a good place for leisure and vacation. Since you're the old platoon leader's friends, then there's no need for me to hide it, said Jia Weili with a faint smile. Kana's had beautiful scenery and was a good place for vacation. On the surface, there was indeed no gold mine. However, it won't be a problem for us mine owners to occupy a few small and secretive private mines and guard the information to the death. Tan Xiao and Xiaomingzhen nodded silently. They felt that the possibility was very big. After all, there were many places that couldn't see the light of day. It was not easy for Jia Weili to tell them that he had a gold mine. Jia Weili, listen to my advice. Business can be done and money can be earned, but it's best to kill less people. Else, if you have too much death qi on your body, you'll be affected by bad karma. If it's light, you'll suffer from a serious illness. If it's heavy, you'll have bad luck and a bloody calamity. Tan Xiao thought for a moment and slowly said. Jia Weili stared blankly for a moment. Then he squinted his eyes and looked at Tan Xiao again. After a long while he slowly said, there's a feng shui master in the mainland. Could it be that little brother Tan Xiao is also good at this? I know a thing or two about it. Tan Xiao casually replied. Jia Weili suddenly pointed to Mo Ao, who was driving, and said, this brother is probably not an ordinary person, right? I can feel the threat coming from him. Mo Ao turned his head and revealed his white teeth as he smilingly said, you have good eyesight. I've killed more than 3 digits. Hiss. Jia Weili sucked in a breath of cold air, and the wariness in his eyes instantly increased a lot. Tan Xiao frowned and shouted, oh, shut up. Mo Ao shrunk his neck and didn't dare to speak anymore. Tan Xiao looked at Jia Weili and smilingly said, don't listen to Ao's nonsense. He likes to brag. In fact, don't look at him just because he's tall and strong. He doesn't even dare to kill a chicken. Jia Weili was not a fool. How could he not hear Tan Xiao's concealing tone? However, although he was curious about the identity of Tan Xiao and the others, he didn't intend to find out more about them. His old platoon leader, Yuan Zhengxian, had once saved his life. They had a deep comrade-in-arms relationship. So he put down the things at hand and personally came to help Tan Xiao and the others. Longquan Bay. It was a very beautiful name, but it was a place full of danger. There were many lakes here, but there were also many swamps. If outsiders who didn't know about the Longquan Bay area rashly wandered here, they might lose their lives while enjoying the beautiful scenery. Therefore, even though the tourism industry in Kanas was developed, this place was still undeveloped, and there were only a few people who usually came here. Longquan Village. It was one of the few villages in Longquan Bay, and the population living here was less than 100 households. Miao Wentong's assistant and 2 bodyguards were guarding Miao Wentong here. At 12:30 late at night, 5 SUVs arrived at Longquan Village. They stopped outside the village, and just as Tan Xiao and the others got off, one of Miao Wentong's bodyguards came out from the dark and hidden bushes. Mr. Xiao. The bodyguard only knew Xiaomingzhen, and immediately came to greet him. Xiaomingzhen nodded and asked, where's Miao Wentong? The bodyguard glanced at Tan Xiao and the others. He then pointed to the inside of the village and said, we've arranged the boss inside. I'll take you there. A few minutes later, the group entered the village and came outside the farmhouse courtyard where Miao Wentong was staying. As Xiaomingzhen hurriedly entered the courtyard, Tan Xiao stopped and took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket. He took one out and handed it to Jia Weili. Jia Weili was a shrewd man. He immediately understood after seeing Tan Xiao's action and said, I won't follow you inside, Mr. Tang. You can call me if you need anything. Jia Weili, thank you very much for sending us here, said Tan Xiao. My friend has encountered a very troublesome matter here. If you stay, you may be implicated. I know you have a very good relationship with Uncle Yuan, but we can handle some things by ourselves. If you can, I'll have to trouble you to leave us 4 cars. Jia Weili pondered for a moment before he nodded and said, all right, let's go back first. As Jia Weili left with his 2 men, Tan Xiao quickly entered. When he saw Miao Wentong lying on the bed with a pale face and purple lips, he immediately grabbed his wrist. Poison, it's a very terrifying poison. After Tan Xiao examined him, he found that not only was Miao Wentong poisoned, but his body was also riddled with scars. Some of them were caused by swords and sabers, but more of them seemed to be scratched by the claws of wild beasts. Immediately, Tan Xiao took out silver needles and performed acupuncture on Miao Wentong. At the same time, he infused his primal chaos force into his body to help him force the poison out. Unfortunately, the toxicity of this poison was too strong. Even after spending several hours, Tan Xiao still only managed to expel a small part of the poison from Miao Wentong's body. Cough, cough, the unconscious Miao Wentong finally woke up after coughing up blood. His eyes slowly opened as his vision focused and fell on Xiao Mingjin and Tang Xiao. He wanted to struggle to sit up, but the pain from his wound and the weakness of his body made him unable to succeed. Tan Xiao pressed his shoulder and said, "Brother Miao, your injuries are very serious. The poison inside your body has caused great damage to your internal organs. Fortunately, your cultivation is deep and can temporarily suppress the poison. But if you can't treat it in time, I'm afraid you won't be able to hold on for too long." Xiao Mingjin also hurriedly said, "Brother Tang has just helped you expel the poison, but only a small part of it has been forced out. The rest will depend on you." "Thank you, brother." Miao Wentong squeezed out a trace of an ugly smile. His lips squirmed, but his voice was very small. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "Don't treat me like an outsider. Brother Miao, what exactly happened? Who injured you like this?" A touch of fear was revealed in Miao Wentong's eyes as he bitterly said, "Western nefarious Sangha and bloodthirsty cuboid bats. You must be careful. Western nefarious Sangha's evil arts are very terrifying, and the two bloodthirsty cuboid bats he raised are also very powerful. Also, be careful of golden armored zombie." Tan Xiao and Xiao Mingjin looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know who or what kind of monster Miao Wentong was talking about. "Actually, I don't know much about it. This time, I was tricked by someone. I brought a group of people here thinking that I could make a big deal, but I ended up running into Western Nefarious Sangha and Golden Armored Zombie. Western Nefarious Sangha is what that bald monk called himself, whereas that Golden Armored Zombie is an ancient corpse with spiritual wisdom, similar to a zombie." After Miao Wentong calmed down a lot, he used his true essence to suppress the poison inside his body while speaking. "Who tricked you?" asked Tan Xiao. "What deal?" Miao Wentong asked. "It's Miaojiang Shiva. She told me that there was a night orchid and a meteorite spirit here. As long as I can take out the sky sandstone and make a deal with them, they can give me the two things I need." Tan Xiao's complexion changed as he said in a deep voice, "Didn't I warn you not to spread the news that you have sky sandstone?" Miao Wentong bitterly said, "I used the sky sandstone to make a pendant, which was inadvertently discovered by Shiva of the Miao territory. In fact, she was talking about that pendant. Those who can recognize the sky sandstone are by no means ordinary people," said Tan Xiao seriously. "Once they recognize it, they will definitely try every means possible to snatch it. You were too careless, Brother Miao." "It's too late for me to regret it now," said Miao Wentong. "The people I brought were all killed, the sky sandstone pendant was robbed and Tan Xiao sighed. His expression eased down as he said, "Brother Miao, the most important thing for you now is to heal and expel the poison. I'll also help you. After your injuries are healed, we'll meet that Western Nefarious Sangha together." Chapter 642. After 3 days of recuperation, Miao Wentong's injuries were almost healed, and the toxins in his body were all forced out. Even with Tan Xiao's help consuming 2 healing medicinal pills and half a bottle of body refining potion, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. His physical strength was strengthened a lot, and his cultivation was also faintly improved. Miao Wentong was grateful, while Xiao Mingjin's eyes turned red. "Why didn't I get injured?" Xiao Mingjin sighed with a sour tone as he watched Miao Wentong perform a set of fist technique in a carefree manner. At this moment, Tan Xiao was simply a delicious cake in his eyes, a treasure house that seemed to have endless treasures. Suddenly, he was very envious of Chen Zhizhong, and even admired him from the bottom of his heart. Having such a powerful master like Tan Xiao must have brought him a lot of benefits, right? Miao Wentong wiped the sweat on his face and grinned. "Brother Xiao, do you think it's good to be hit so hard? I almost died." Even if I get a blessing in disguise in the future, I don't want to suffer it a second time. Hehe. Xiao Mingjin let out an awkward laugh as his eyes fell on Tan Xiu, who just came out of the house, dressed in sportswear. Tan Xiu came to the courtyard and said, "It's almost time. Brother Miao, let's have breakfast and immediately go to the place where you were attacked. Although I don't know if Western Nefarious Sangha and Golden Armored Zombie are still there, we still have to look for them. It's necessary to find them and make them pay the price." Miao Wentong's heart trembled as a trace of fear flashed in his eyes. He then helplessly said, "Brother Tang, I know you've become very strong now, but that Western Nefarious Sangha is really evil. He has all kinds of despicable and shameless means, and even his cultivation is higher than mine. There's also that Golden Armored Zombie. He didn't even make a move, but his imposing aura alone made me shiver. How about we wait a little longer? It's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge. Let's wait until we're stronger, and then come back to find them." Tan Xiu shot a deep look at Miao Wentong. He found that Miao Wentong didn't want to face Western Nefarious Sangha and Golden Armored Zombie again. Miao Wentong was afraid. Tan Xiu's vision fell on Xiao Mingjin's face, and found that he also nodded cautiously. Finally, he could only force a smile and said, "Since you don't want to face it, then I'll obey the majority. Let's have breakfast first, then we'll leave immediately." And the two of them nodded silently. On the shore of a sparkling lake in Longquan Bay, two water birds were flapping their wings as they charged towards the sky, giving off the aura of eagles soaring through the sky. Their eyes were blood red, and their bodies were twice the size of ordinary water birds. Their sharp claws were long and sharp. Phew! A violent gust of wind swept past, and the two water birds that had soared to a height of dozens of meters completely disappeared amid a few drops of blood and a large number of feathers. "Ruthless corpse, you're courting death." An angry roar came from the bald monk who was sitting cross-legged on the shore. This monk had 9 incense scars on his head, and he wore a bright kasaya. His broad earlobes were adorned with circular earrings, and his demon-subduing wand rested on his knees. A monstrous aura erupted from his body, blotting out the sky and covering the earth as it pressed down on the flying feathers in the air. "Ha ha ha!" Amidst the laughter of the monk, a humanoid monster wearing a golden armor and a black cloth covering his face, with only his eyes exposed, appeared out of thin air. "Don't be so stingy, Western Nefarious Sangha. It's just 2 puppet birds. You can easily control more of them. I'm hungry, very hungry. If you can give me that sky sandstone, maybe I can eat my fill. The deal between us has been completed, and the sky sandstone belongs to me." Western Nefarious Sangha snorted coldly. "Get the fuck out of here if you know what's good for you, else don't blame me for being rude." Golden Armored Zombie burst into wild laughter and said, "Let's make a bet, huh? Don't you like gambling the most? I'll tell you where that surnamed Miao is, and you give me the sky sandstone. How about it?" Western Nefarious Sangha's expression moved. He squinted at Golden Armored Zombie and immediately sneered and shook his head. "I've seen a lot of tricks to gain something without risking anything. Don't try to play tricks with me. However, if you take me to that surnamed Miao and I get the sky sandstone from him, you can share it equally with me." Golden Armored Zombie let out a strange cry, and turned around to fly into the distance. However, a subtle voice was transmitted into Western Nefarious Sangha's ears. "Longquan Village. Longquan Village." 10 SUVs were all started, but there were only a few people on each one. Originally, Miao Wentong brought more than 20 people, many of whom were experts he had trained. But now there were only 2 bodyguards and 1 assistant left. "Let's go. We need to leave this damned place as soon as possible." Sitting next to Tan Xiu, Miao Wentong glanced at Xiao Mingjin on the front seat and sighed deeply. "I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to leave." Tan Xiu frowned and lightly said, "What do you mean?" Miao Wentong stared blankly and asked with a confused expression. "There are some things in this world that are hard to avoid," Tan Xiu said lightly. "Even if you don't want to look for others, they still come knocking on your door. It seems that this is bound to be a game of life and death." With that said, Tan Xiu opened the door and got off the car. He walked 5 or 6 steps forward, and his eyes fell on the old monk who just walked in from the Longquan village's entrance. "It's him." Miao Wentong's complexion greatly changed. Even though he was afraid, he was still prepared to fight and kill as though he was facing a formidable enemy. Ba. Benefactor Miao has great skills. You've been poisoned by this poor monk's 7 flowers 7 insects poison, yet you're still alive. I didn't expect that you would attract so many helpers. A bit of disdain appeared in Western Nefarious Sangha's eyes as he spoke with a loud and clear voice. Miao Wentong strode forward and stood side by side with Tan Xiao. He stared at Western Nefarious Sangha and shouted, "You and Shiva joined hands to trap me. I was going to admit defeat and leave this place to go back to the mainland. But I never thought that you would be so aggressive and even chase me here. Do you really think I'm so easy to bully, Western Nefarious Sangha?" Ba. Benefactor Miao is indeed very easy to bully. Western Nefarious Sangha nodded and smilingly said, Miao Wentong was furious. He knew that today's matter wouldn't end well, and he didn't want to endure it anymore. Even a clay figurine would have 3 points of anger. Since he was forced to this point, at worst, it would be a life and death struggle. The moment he drew his blade, he dashed toward Western Nefarious Sangha. "Golden armored zombie, I know what you're up to." The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. "Don't you dare to make a ruckus. This little guy surnamed Miao is easy to deal with, but there are a few others here who aren't so easy to deal with. If you don't show up, I'll leave immediately." Western Nefarious Sangha's eyes were very sharp. He couldn't see through Tan Xiao's strength, which made him secretly cautious. Xiao Mingzhen's aura was not much weaker than Miao Wentong's. The most important thing was that there was a group of very special guys. Half of them should be cultivators, and they should be a group of ruthless and merciless people. They're too familiar with each other. It's too difficult to trick them. Golden armored zombie whizzed over. Upon seeing that Miao Wentong and Western Nefarious Sangha had already exchanged blows, he immediately shook his head and sighed. Tan Xiao glanced at Xiao Mingzhen and said, "Go help brother Miao. Leave this corpse to me." Xiao Mingzhen complied and flew toward Western Nefarious Sangha. Golden armored zombie obviously heard Tan Xiao's words. His fierce eyes fell on Tan Xiao as he carefully observed Tan Xiao a few times. Then he let out a strange laugh. "You're quite bold, little kid. But even if you started cultivating in your mother's womb, you won't have many achievements at your age, right? Come. This seat will let you have 300 moves." Tan Xiao put his hands into his pocket and took out a porcelain bottle. Tan Xiao shook it in front of Golden Armored Zombie and said with a playful smile, "Do you believe that I won't take care of you, evildoer?" Golden Armored Zombie waved his arm, and a dazzling golden spear instantly shot toward Tan Xiao. In the next moment he also followed and appeared in front of Tan Xiao in the blink of an eye. Huff! The golden spear pierced the phantom, but Golden Armored Zombie punched Tan Xiao's left shoulder. His speed was too fast that even if Tan Xiao went all out, he would still be slightly slower than him. However, at this moment, Tan Xiao flicked his finger and popped the cork of the porcelain bottle. A corrosive liquid sprayed on Golden Armored Zombie's body. Buzz, the pungent stench of rotting corpses quickly dissipated. After the white smoke emerged from Golden Armored Zombie's body. Even though Golden Armored Zombie had a body as tough as iron and copper skin, he still let out a miserable howl. In just 1/100th of a second, he tumbled and soared into the sky. Western Nefarious Sangha, who was resisting the joint attack of Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingzhen, suddenly heard Golden Armored Zombie's howl, and immediately looked over there. How is this possible? What means did that young man use? He can even make Golden Armored Zombie suffer a big loss? Western Nefarious Sangha was secretly shocked. Tan Xiao burst into laughter and said, "I thought it would take me a lot of effort to deal with you, but I never thought that I would. You're really afraid of the corpse decomposing liquid, huh? Haha." As his voice faded away, he dashed toward Golden Armored Zombie. He wanted to kill Golden Armored Zombie. He had killed people and robbed their treasures many times, but this time, he was looking forward to it. He found that there was a meteorite essence on Golden Armored Zombie's body, and it was even hanging on his waist. Meteorite essence. It was something more precious than the sky sandstone. This kind of ore had an excellent effect in improving the quality of immortal swords. Tan Xiao had made up his mind to get the meteorite essence and integrate it into the Bloodguzzler dagger. That way, the quality of the Bloodguzzler dagger would be greatly improved, and it was even likely that it would give birth to an artifact spirit in a short time. Oh, you must ensure their safety. I'll immediately return after I get rid of Golden Armored Zombie. Just as Tan Xiao was about to disappear into the sky, his voice came rolling over. A grim expression hung on Ah's face. Although he and the 10 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall were still very weak, he would absolutely carry out Tan Xiao's order at all costs. Draw your swords. Ah shouted as a long sword appeared in his hand out of thin air. Similarly, a long sword also appeared in the hands of the other 10 experts. Chapter 643. The Everlasting Feast Hall had recently added 4 new subjects to train powerhouses, namely, magical techniques, body refining, flying swords, and sword arrays. Since Gu Yan, had just woken up from her coma, she didn't have many treasures in her storage ring, not to mention a low-level flying sword. But in order to train the Everlasting Feast Hall's experts, she still took the time to personally refine dozens of flying swords and handed them to the most qualified experts. Sword array. It was taught by Ji Qimei to formulate 4 kinds of combined sword arrays. The double sword array, the 4 symbols sword array, the 8-form sword array, and the 10 directions heavenly cycle sword array. Since Tan Xiao needed a group of experts to accompany him, Gu Yan personally ordered to send 10 experts who practiced the 10 directions heavenly cycle sword array. At this moment, Western Nefarious Sunga's eyes instantly lit up when he saw the flying swords from Mo Ao's group. However, after he forced Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin to retreat, not only did he not take the initiative to attack, but he also did not rush toward Mo Ao's group. Instead, he quickly sprinkled a handful of heavy ash, turned around, and flew toward the distance. They ran away? Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin exchanged dismayed glances. When they turned around and saw the flying swords in Mo Ao's group, their brows slightly furrowed. They were sure that Mo Ao's group didn't carry swords before, but now they were holding flying swords. Could it be that they had the legendary interspatial ring? 11 flying swords. This was something they didn't dare to imagine. After all, they were well aware of the situation in the modern cultivation world. It had fallen to the extreme, and the number of cultivators was as rare as phoenix feathers and unicorn horns, who could take out 11 flying swords and give them to their subordinates at the same time. Mr. Miao, should we chase after them? Mo Ao flashed to the front of the duo and asked. Miao Wentong hesitated for a moment before he shook his head and said, "Forget it. Western Nefarious Sunga's strength is too strong. He hasn't displayed his endless means, and those 2 bloodthirsty Archaeopterysts have yet to appear. Even if Brother Xiao and I join forces, I'm afraid we're not his match. Let's go find Tan Xiao. That golden armored zombie's aura is very terrifying, and I'm afraid he's not his match." A few minutes later, Western Nefarious Sunga had already fled more than 10 miles away. When he found that there were no pursuers behind him, his figure flashed and he rushed into a mountain forest. When his figure stopped under a towering tree, the expression on his old face was uncertain. He was not afraid of Miao Wentong. Shiva had already told him everything about Miao Wentong. He was not afraid of the other middle-aged man who attacked him together with Miao Wentong. That was because the other party's strength was on par with Miao Wentong's. If he used his trump card, he would definitely be able to kill the 2 of them. But the appearance of the 11 flying swords was like a clap of thunder exploding in his heart, shocking him to the point of fear. 11 flying swords. The users were 11 cultivators who had barely broken through to the foundation establishment stage. What did this mean? This showed that the young man who had just gone to kill Golden Armored Zombie was absolutely terrifying, and there might even be an extremely terrifying force behind him. The unknown was the scariest. He thought that he understood the current situation of the cultivation world very well, but suddenly discovered an unknown force with countless flying swords, which made him afraid. He was cunning, low-key, and cautious by nature. He always planned before taking action. Of course, it was also appropriate to describe him as a coward. What are their origins? Tan Xiao's face once again emerged in Western Nefarious Sunga's mind. The 11 cultivators who had just unleashed their flying swords all obeyed his orders, indicating that his status was absolutely high. I must find out the other party's details. Only by knowing the enemy and myself can I measure the degree of danger after taking action. The flying swords must be obtained, but I must find the right time. Killing people and seizing their treasures must be done cleanly and beautifully, without leaving any future troubles. I hope Golden Armored Zombie can escape alive. Western Nefarious Sangha grabbed a string of Buddhist beads and prayed silently while fiddling with it with his thumb. Golden Armored Zombie was a powerful character who came out of an ancient tomb in a dark and evil place in the western regions. He had once fought with him for nearly 100 years. Although they had always been fighting, they had always shared a common hatred when facing the enemy. They had even joined hands to resist the enemy many times, which could be considered as establishing a special friendship. In the sky above the largest swamp in Longquan Bay, Tan Xiao held the Bloodguzzler dagger in a backhand grip. Every time he waved it, a saber light would appear. Golden Armored Zombie's body was extremely hard. Even if the saber light slashed his body, it could only leave a white mark amidst the splashing sparks. Only the places on Golden Armored Zombie's body that had been splashed with the corpse decomposing water could cause him some injuries. You can't escape, Golden Armored Zombie. Obediently surrender is your best choice. Tan Xiao's fighting spirit was high as he slashed at Golden Armored Zombie, causing him to constantly dodge. Golden Armored Zombie's eyes were bloodshot and full of hatred as he dodged, occasionally seizing the opportunity to launch one or two counterattacks. His speed was fast, but Tan Xiao's speed was not much slower. The most important thing was that Tan Xiao had extremely rich combat experience. Every time his attack trajectory was detected by Tan Xiao in advance. Who the hell are you? Golden Armored Zombie roared angrily. You don't need to know who I am. Tan Xiao sneered. What I can tell you is that as long as you choose to surrender, not only will I not kill you, but I'll also give you a great opportunity. However, I want the meteorite essence on you. Golden Armored Zombie was very sullen. His speed was not much faster than Tan Xiao's, and his strength was also not much stronger than Tan Xiao's. What made him most depressed was that his sharp claws swept Tan Xiao's body, yet he couldn't cause any harm to Tan Xiao. He even doubted whether Tan Xiao was a human being or not. How could his physical strength reach such a terrifying state? Whoosh, 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 whoosh. A group of figures rushed over like the wind and lightning. A bad premonition rose in Golden Armored Zombie's heart when he saw those figures. Logically speaking, Western Nefarious Sangha was very strong. Even if he couldn't kill all of them, he shouldn't be killed, right? With Western Nefarious Sangha here, how could they rush over so fast? Bloodsea. Golden Armored Zombie finally used his trump card. As his sharp claws tore open the space between his eyebrows, a drop of golden blood instantly shot out. In just 1 or 2 seconds, the drop of golden blood suddenly exploded, forming a surging red tide. Tan Xiao keenly felt the terrifying energy contained in the blood tide. He didn't panic in the face of danger and sneered. Golden Armored Zombie, I see that you won't shed a tear until you see your coffin. That's good too. Watch me break your killing move. Thunder Manipulation Art. The Blood Drinker Dagger pointed straight to the sky, and a series of incantations appeared. A terrifying aura fell from the sky, causing Golden Armored Zombie's expression to change drastically. Bolts of lightning struck the blood tide. At the same time, Tan Xiao waved his arm and cast the True Fire Art. Layers of true fire flames appeared out of thin air around the blood tide in a radius of tens of meters, shrouding the entire blood tide. Thunder and Lightning Spell? True Fire Spell? Golden Armored Zombie's complexion paled as fear welled up in his heart. He was an ancient corpse and was most afraid of thunder and lightning and true fire. Although his magic power was very high, it was not his magic power that was the most powerful, but his own physical strength. Take it. I'll give you the meteorite essence. Tan Xiao looked happy and instantly caught the meteorite essence thrown by Golden Armored Zombie. After checking it a few times, he directly threw it into his interspatial ring. He watched the blood tide shrink and turn back into a drop of golden liquid in the blink of an eye. After Golden Armored Zombie slapped it into his glabella, he immediately retracted the technique. You'll be glad of your decision. Tan Xiao snorted coldly and quickly took out a piece of jade. He made a simple jade slip, and then carved a cultivation technique inside. A stream of light shot out from his fingers as he spoke again. This is the primary cultivation technique of the corpse refining sect. Take it and practice it well. It can guarantee you to reach the nascent soul stage. If you want the follow-up cultivation technique, come to Demonic City to find me in the future. Corpse refining sect? Primary cultivation technique? Nascent soul stage? A wisp of golden armored zombies' divine sense fused into the jade slip in his hand. When he finished reading the entire cultivation technique, his burly body trembled violently. The ecstasy in his heart was even more earth-shattering. He was an ancient corpse with spiritual wisdom. After exploring for 200 to 300 years, he only found a little cultivation technique a few decades ago. Then he desperately absorbed the evil Yin energy, and looked for the corpse energy in ancient tombs to absorb. Only then did he have his current strength. This cultivation technique was simply tailor-made for him. It was simply tailor-made for him. He didn't dare to imagine how strong he would become in the future if he cultivated according to this cultivation method. Thank you, Immortal Master. Golden armored zombie knelt down on one knee in the void and cupped his fists toward Tan Xiao with gratitude. Tan Xiao indifferently said, I gave you this cultivation technique because you gave me the meteorite essence. But remember, no matter how powerful you become in the future, you must never harm ordinary humans. You must not kill too many people. Otherwise, even if you cultivate to the late nascent soul stage, I will still send people to eliminate you. Golden armored zombie hurriedly said, never in the future. Tan Xiao, Brother Tang. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin soared into the sky and looked at golden armored zombie with hostility before calling out in a low voice. What about Western nefarious Sangha? Tan Xiao lightly smiled. He ran away. Xiao Mingjin hatefully said. I don't know why, but he immediately fled after Ao and the others used the sword array. Tan Xiao's sharp eyes shifted to Mo Ao and the others. His complexion greatly changed when he saw the flying swords in their hands. After taking a deep breath, he immediately looked at golden armored zombie and said in a deep voice, I need to know Western nefarious Sangha's background, strength, and various means he has. I even need to know where his lair is. Upon hearing this, golden armored zombie immediately explained everything he knew about Western nefarious Sangha. Finally he said, Longquan Swamp is only tens of kilometers away from here. His Immortal's cave is there, and I think he has fled back now. Golden armored zombie, I want Western nefarious Sangha dead. What's your decision? Tan Xiao coldly said. Golden armored zombie hesitated for a while. He looked at the jade slip in his hand, and then shifted his eyes to Tan Xiao. Finally he slowly said, turn a blind eye, hear a deaf ear. This is the limit of what I can do. Chapter 644. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin looked at each other in dismay. Never in their dreams did they expect that Tan Xiao would have such an evil cultivation technique. This golden armored zombie's current strength was already very terrifying. If he were to cultivate that cultivation technique, how powerful would he be in the future? Tan Xiao. Wasn't he nurturing a tiger to invite calamity? However, despite being very worried, they couldn't control Tan Xiao's thoughts and could only smile wryly at each other in silence. When they landed on the ground, Tan Xiao directly said, Golden armored zombie, Western nefarious Sangha is very strong, you know this. But I want you to see him killed with your own eyes, so you need to stay here for the rest of the time. This, alright. Golden armored zombie hesitated for a moment before he agreed. Although he had wisdom for many years, his mind was not as good as a human's when it came to scheming. He couldn't see through Tan Xiao's true intention. Tan Xiao made him stay, because he was afraid that he would secretly tell the other party about killing Western nefarious Sangha. On the other hand, he also wanted to show off his muscles, and let golden armored zombie see the power he could control. On the way back to Longquan village, Tan Xiao called Gu Xiaoxue and asked the two siblings, Light and Dark, to come as fast as possible. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin must not be brought along to kill Western nefarious Sangha, because Tan Xiao could tell from their words and actions that they didn't guess that Mo Ao and the others were holding flying swords. He also quietly asked Mo Ao about this matter, and learned that Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin were desperately fighting Western nefarious Sangha when Mo Ao and the others took out their flying swords. Even their men shouldn't have noticed them taking out their flying swords. In the courtyard, Tan Xiu looked at Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin, who wanted to say something but hesitated. He thought for a moment and understood their thoughts, so he lightly smiled and said, "Two brothers, I'm aware of your concerns. Western nefarious Sangha has done a lot of evil deeds, and has probably harmed many ordinary people. Even without Brother Miao's matter, I would still try to get rid of him if I knew about it. However, our current strength isn't enough. Even if we attack him together, the chances of us killing him are very slim." Miao Wentong quickly asked, "What's your plan?" Tan Xiu said, "Find help." Miao Wentong asked in confusion, "Who?" Tan Xiu lightly smiled and said, "I know you two are curious, but now is not the time to tell you. Western nefarious Sangha must be killed, but you can't get involved. The people I invited were very strange, and didn't want to communicate with strangers. Wait a few days. After a few days, I promise to give you an answer." When Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin heard this, they suppressed the curiosity in their hearts and no longer asked about these things. They were very clear that Tan Xiu was very methodical in doing things, and they were very relieved. Although they all understood that Tan Xiu used Western nefarious Sangha as an excuse, it was not appropriate for them to say anything. 2 days later, Tan Xiu left Longquan village with Golden Armored Zombie. Not long after the car drove out of the village, 2 figures silently appeared. "Brother Miao, it seems that our understanding of Brother Tang is still too little." Xiao Mingjin sighed with a forced smile. Miao Wentong nodded and said, "Ever since we first met in the Everlasting Feast Hall, I've felt that he's very mysterious. Although I've always wanted to figure out his secret, he gives me a feeling that I don't know where to start. Let's not talk about anything else, and just talk about his strength. It's only been half a year, right? His cultivation has advanced by leaps and bounds, and now it's far beyond us. This is simply unimaginable." Xiao Mingjin nodded and said, "That's right. The method he used to fight Golden Armored Zombie, those 2 magic techniques, is like us casting our forbidden techniques. No, even if we cast our forbidden techniques, I'm afraid we won't be able to achieve that kind of power." Miao Wentong was silent for a while. Then he patted Xiao Mingjin's shoulder and earnestly said, "Everyone has their own secrets. Since Tan Xiu doesn't want to tell us his secret, then we shouldn't try to pry it in vain. In short, we'll get closer to him in the future. I'm sure we'll get a lot of benefits." "All right." Xiao Mingjin nodded repeatedly. On a dirt road more than 10 kilometers away from Longquan village, an off-road vehicle was parked. Mo Ao sat in the driver's seat and didn't get off, while 2 siblings, Light and Dark, stood in front of the vehicle. "Grand Master." Light and Dark cupped their fists and respectfully called out. Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction. He glanced at Golden Armored Zombie at the side, who looked as if he was facing a formidable enemy, and lightly said, "They're my juniors, so you don't need to show such an expression. Although you've been practicing the corpse refining sex cultivation technique for the past 2 days, and your strength has faintly improved, either one of them can easily kill you." Golden Armored Zombie cautiously nodded and said, "They're very strong. I can feel the terrifying energy hidden inside their bodies." Tan Xiu faintly smiled and said, "Let's go. We're going to find Western nefarious Sangha." Golden Armored Zombie hesitated and asked, "Can't I really spare his life? Immortal Master, can you not care that I'm a zombie? Why can't you give him a chance to turn over a new leaf? I'm sure he'll choose to surrender if he has to choose between death and submission." Tan Xiu squinted his eyes and lightly said, "Given Western nefarious Sangha's character, I'm afraid he won't surrender so easily. Even if he chooses to surrender for the time being, he may betray me in the future. Therefore, I think cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots is the best choice." Golden Armored Zombie quickly said, "Immortal Master, Western nefarious Sangha is actually a coward. Although he often does despicable and shameless things, he will never dare to betray you if you can show him absolute power or a means that can shake him." "Coward?" A strange expression appeared on Tan Xiu's face, as he looked at Golden Armored Zombie in surprise. He found that Golden Armored Zombie didn't seem to be lying. "Let's talk about it after we meet him," Tan Xiao lightly said and went straight back to the car. Two SUVs rushed toward Western Nefarious Sunga's lair at lightning speed. There was still a dozen miles away from the destination. Mo Ao stayed behind to watch the car since there was no road ahead, while Tan Xiao took Light and Dark and Golden Armored Zombie to fly toward the destination. Longquan Swamp. It was a deep valley surrounded by mountains on all sides. The lowest peak of the four peaks was 500 to 600 meters above sea level, while the highest one was nearly a kilometer above sea level. Western Nefarious Sunga's lair was the immortal abode halfway up the highest peak. When the four of them landed on the tens of square meters of flat ground in front of the immortal abode's entrance, Tan Xiao sighed and said, "This is really a good place to hide from the world. There's even a spiritual vein here, which can be regarded as a paradise for cultivators." "I've never been inside," said Golden Armored Zombie in a low voice. "That Western Nefarious Sunga is very cautious and cautious. We usually meet outside the cave entrance. He once said that he has arranged layers of traps in the immortal abode. Even if I were to rashly break into his immortal abode, my chance of survival would be no more than 30%. Tan Xiao raised his brows. He waved his arm and unleashed the Bloodguzzler dagger, fiercely bombarding the two wooden doors. Along with the splashing of sawdust, he took the lead and stepped into the cave. Destroy. He took out 2 lightning talismans and 2 raging flame talismans at the same time, and stimulated them to surge toward the passage ahead. Inside the 100-meter-long passage, all kinds of traps were destroyed, and a very simple defensive array was also smashed with a loud bang. "Who's there?" The 100-meter-deep cave was as big as a regular football field. Inside, all kinds of carved stone statues stood erect, looking dreamy and illusory under the illumination of various lights. A stream ran through the space of the cave, gurgling and flowing without end. Interesting. They actually used a generator to generate electricity here. Tan Xiao glanced at Western Nefarious Sunga, and then shifted his gaze to the cave scene illuminated by colorful lights. His eyes instantly narrowed when he saw that there were 12 exquisitely carved stone statues on the ground more than 10 meters below. The array arranged by the stone statues is much more exquisite than the defensive array outside, and the power seems to be a lot stronger. This Western Nefarious Sunga does have some ability. Tan Xiao thought inwardly. Western Nefarious Sunga held the vanquishing devil wand, and dashed toward Tan Xiao and the others like a sharp sword. But when he clearly saw who it was, his complexion drastically changed. He finally glared at Golden Armored Zombie and shouted, "Did you bring them here? Did you betray me?" "You should have heard the saying that people have to bow their heads under the eaves, Western Nefarious Sunga," said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. "Golden Armored Zombie didn't want to die, so he had to tell me what I wanted to know. Of course, he also paid some price, such as giving me the meteorite essence he had." "Who exactly are you?" asked Western Nefarious Sunga in a deep voice. "It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that you found out some of my secrets," said Tan Xiao. "So you must die." Western Nefarious Sunga thought about it, and realized what the secret Tan Xiao was talking about was. Tan Xiao was very strong, and Light at his side didn't seem to be a weakling either. They could defeat Golden Armored Zombie, so they could probably defeat him as well. Though he still had a trump card, it was hard to say who would live and who would die. "I'll give you the meteorite essence and promise to keep the secret for you. How about we write off our previous grievances?" "It seems that Golden Armored Zombie is right. You're very timid." Tan Xiao shook his head. "However, you're called Western Nefarious Sunga, so who would believe your promise? In my opinion, only the dead can keep the secret forever." Whoosh! As Tan Xiao's voice faded away, the white-clothed Light instantly dashed to the front of Western Nefarious Sunga. The moment he unleashed his flying sword, layers of overlapping sword images enveloped Western Nefarious Sunga. These sword images seemed to appear out of thin air, and continuously emerged from all directions. Each sword image was filled with a swift and fierce aura. Break! Western Nefarious Sunga waved the vanquishing demon wand. Layers of staff images surged with black mist and intertwined with the sword images. At the same time, his other hand fiercely patted the cloth bag on his waist. Suddenly, two flames rushed out and turned into two goshawk-sized bloodthirsty ancient bats. Squeak, squeak. The two bloodthirsty ancient bats flapped their wings and a sea of fire boiled in the air. Chapter 645. Light, who was at the golden core stage, was much stronger than Western Nefarious Sangha. Furthermore, the flying sword seemed to have the help of God as it shot out layer upon layer, crushing Western Nefarious Sangha's vanquishing devil wand. At the moment when Western Nefarious Sangha crazily spurted out blood, the sea of fire was pierced by the sword shadows and struck the two bloodthirsty chiropterans. Retreat. Scared out of his wits, Western Nefarious Sangha hurriedly retreated while hurriedly putting away the two injured bloodthirsty chiropterans and retreating to the middle of the stone statues. His hands constantly formed seals and used his blood as a guide to activate the array in an instant. You're very strong, so strong that I feel ashamed of my inferiority. But I learned this array from an ancient book. Those 8 Buddhas once desperately attacked it for 7 days and 7 nights, yet they couldn't break it. Even the 7 of them were injured by this array and had no choice but to retreat. Come in and kill me if you have the ability. Western Nefarious Sangha was distressed that his refined magic weapon was destroyed, so he angrily glared at Light and roared. Light hesitated. He was confident that he could break through this array formation, but if he were to use a powerful technique, the cave would not be able to withstand it. Once the whole mountain collapsed, his chances of escaping would be very small even if he had the strength of a golden core stage cultivator. Not to mention that Tan Xiao was still here. Insignificant skill. Tan Xiao sneered and gave Light a look to calm down. He then floated to the front of the array. As his hands constantly patted the void, layers of ripples suddenly appeared on the invisible and colorless light curtain of the array. As the ripples appeared and surged, fine cracks appeared. Foundation destruction. A silver needle suddenly shot out from Tan Xiao's hand and penetrated the crack, hitting the rock under Western Nefarious Sangha's feet, and easily pierced through it. Boom! The formation instantly shattered, and the screen of light also disappeared in an instant. Even the 12 stone statues exploded at this moment, shattering into pieces and scattering all over the ground. Tan Xiao retreated a few meters and waved his hand to block the splashing gravel. He then looked at Western Nefarious Sangha, whose face had changed miserably, and ridiculed. I might not know much about it if you used other means. But if you want to play formations with me, you're miles away. Western Nefarious Sangha retreated tens of meters back. He raised his hand to wipe the bloodstain on the corner of his mouth as he looked at Tan Xiao and said, "It's me who's confused. Your men all have flying swords, which means that you or your men are proficient in arrays. After all, refining flying swords requires an array to be engraved inside. To tell you the truth, this formation is only one of my trump cards. I still have another trump card that I haven't used yet. Of course, I can tell you that the second trump card is a method of mutual destruction. Even if I can kill you, I will die here." Tan Xiao slightly furrowed his brows as he looked at Western Nefarious Sangha's cold and gloomy eyes. Then he suddenly smiled and said, "Do you think you can use your final trump card?" "What do you mean?" Western Nefarious Sangha's heart suddenly jolted, and his pupils shrunk in an instant. His sturdy body abruptly moved a few meters in an instant. A flying sword appeared out of thin air and swept towards the place where he was originally standing. After the black figure appeared only a dozen meters away from him, one of his arms was instantly sent flying. "Damn it!" Western Nefarious Sangha cursed loudly as a green pungent smoke sprayed out from his kasaya. The billowing green smoke seemed to have turned into a pair of arms that directly pulled his severed arm back and pressed it on his severed arm as he quickly dodged the sword light that shot at him again. The black-robed and masked Dark's speed was nearly twice as fast as Western Nefarious Sangha. Even though Western Nefarious Sangha dodged fast, the sword light still swept his back and tore a long bloody wound. At this time, Light's figure also dashed forward like a cannonball and launched an attack from the other side of Western Nefarious Sangha. Had it been alone, it would have taken a lot of effort to kill Western Nefarious Sangha. But with the two of them joining forces, their strength instantly soared. The two flying swords hovered in the air and bloomed like a lotus flower. The dense sword shadows were like a giant dragon that pounced toward Western Nefarious Sangha. Nefarious Flame Relic. Western Nefarious Sangha spewed out a pitch-black relic that was the size of a glass ball, with a layer of black flame burning around it. After Western Nefarious Sangha forced out a mass of blood essence, the black flame instantly turned into a wildfire that instantly enveloped the area within dozens of meters around him. A miniaturized version of the pitch-black relic appeared out of thin air, and turned into a black dragon in the blink of an eye that pounced toward the sword dragon. Boom! The black dragon was smashed and shattered, while the sword dragon's power also plummeted, and even showed signs of collapsing. However, under the control of light and dark, the sword dragon still pounced toward Western Nefarious Sangha. Shield of Destruction. The moment Western Nefarious Sangha's 7 orifices overflowed with blood, a black shield was released from his body to block in front of him. The sword dragon slammed into the shield, causing layers of fine cracks to appear on the shield. However, it was not completely destroyed like his demon-subduing Zai. Instead, it blocked the sword dragon and hit Western Nefarious Sangha. Western Nefarious Sangha's body was akin to a falling leaf that heavily hit the cave wall tens of meters away, before crashing down with a loud bang. He spurted out a mouthful of blood, and his face was covered with a layer of deathly gray. You can block our joint attack. Not bad. Barefoot treaded on the void. The flying sword returned to his hand and flew toward Western Nefarious Sangha. Golden-armored zombie, who was standing at the cave entrance, had been paying attention to the changes in the situation inside. Never once did he expect that light and dark strength would be so formidable. Never once did he expect that their joint attack would reach such a horrifying level. He imagined for a moment that if he was the one being attacked by the two of them, then with just that one strike, the powerful body that he was so proud of would be completely destroyed, and he would have no other choice but to die. A joint attack. It was enough to kill him. At this moment, Golden-armored zombie suddenly felt lucky that he didn't continue to be enemies with Tan Xiao. Otherwise, wouldn't he be dead by now? Tan Xiao's eyes gleamed as he raised his hand and shouted, "Light, dark, spare his life first." Light stared blankly and instantly retracted his hand, whereas dark instantly sprinkled black smoke and disappeared into it. Tan Xiao trod on the void and came to Western Nefarious Sangha's front step by step. With a faint smile, he said, "You do have endless means and many treasures. However, I can still see that you're afraid of death. You don't even want to perish together with us unless it's a last resort. That being the case, I can give you a chance to live." Western Nefarious Sangha was severely injured, and his body was torn by hundreds of sword shadows. But the wounds were temporarily sealed under the effect of his true essence to stop the blood from flowing out. He was even secretly prepared to use his final killing move to perish together with light and dark if they attacked him again. However, Tan Xiao's words made him feel like he had gone from hell to heaven. What condition? Western Nefarious Sangha instantly got up and pressed his back against the mountain wall as he asked, "You know my secret, but I don't believe in your nature," said Tan Xiao slowly. "That's why I must be able to control your life and death to spare your puny life. As long as you let go of your mind and let me leave a seal in your body, not only will you not die, you may even get great benefits in the future." Western Nefarious Sangha's pupils shrunk and he asked in amazement, "You know the soul-controlling technique? You actually know the soul-controlling technique?" asked Tan Xiao in astonishment. Western Nefarious Sangha let out a bitter smile and said, "There's a record in the ancient book I once got. If one's mind is controlled, one can only become a puppet. Just like the countless times I fought with Golden-armored zombie, the purpose of which was to use the soul-controlling technique on him. It's a pity that my strength is slightly inferior to his. Even though I have many means, I still can't succeed. The soul-controlling technique you mentioned is different from mine." Tan Xiao shook his head. "The soul-controlling technique I cast will only leave a seal in your heart. I can decide your life and death with just a thought if you dare to betray me. But you'll still have your own intelligence and do whatever you want, just like before. Are you sure?" Western Nefarious Sangha's complexion changed, and his eyes stared at Tan Xiao's expression, wanting to find some clues. You would have been dead by now if I wanted you to die, said Tanxio straightforwardly. Don't think that you have some means to perish together with me. You haven't seen the means I have. There are only two paths in front of you now. The first is to submit to me and be sealed by me. The second is to die. I have countless ways to kill you, and I can even protect myself. Western Nefarious Sanga's expression constantly changed. He didn't know whether he should believe Tanxio or not. But given the current situation, he was afraid that he would really die if he didn't agree. After struggling inwardly for a long time, he finally nodded slowly and let go of his mind. Tanxio let out an indifferent smile, and quickly cast the soul-controlling technique to control Western Nefarious Sanga. After that, he said with satisfaction, "A wise man submits to circumstances. Your life is in my hands from now on. You must obey my orders unconditionally in the future." Western Nefarious Sanga had a vague feeling that his fate was under Tanxio's control. Since things had come to this point, he sighed inwardly and nodded respectfully. "I'll do whatever you want me to do in the future. I don't need you to do anything for the time being." Tanxio waved his hand and said, "Just stay here and cultivate well. Also, I'll teach you a new cultivation technique that can help you cultivate to the late stage of the nascent Buddha realm in the future. I'll contact you again when I need you to do something." Having said that, he took out a jade slip and engraved a basic Buddhist cultivation technique on it. Then he threw it to Western Nefarious Sanga and said, "I'm surnamed Tang Tanxio. I'm the Everlasting Feast Hall's boss. Come to Jingmen Island's Everlasting Feast Hall every year." Understood. Western Nefarious Sanga nodded respectfully. Tanxio pointed to Golden Armored Zombie and said, "Don't blame him. I spared his life and gave him some benefits. He's naturally willing to tell me your news. My request to him is very simple. He's not allowed to hurt ordinary people, nor is he allowed to kill and rob people. It's the same for you. It's the end of the month. I'm asking for monthly votes to support me." Chapter 646. Inside the spacious cave, a raging fire was burning. In front of the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron, Tanxio kept throwing pieces of jade into the cauldron, and even shot out some secret techniques. Under the mysterious aura, the jade inside the cauldron liquefied and formed various forms according to Tanxio's thoughts. Jade bottles, jade boxes, and jade barrels. Withstanding the monstrous heat wave, Western Nefarious Sanga was dumbfounded as he watched Tanxio's actions. He watched as jade bottles, jade boxes, and jade barrels flew out of the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron, and then disappeared in Tanxio's hands. As a cultivator, he naturally knew that cultivators had countless magical abilities and means, but he only knew how to arrange simple arrays and use several simple spells. Artifact refining. Western Nefarious Sanga once dreamed of learning this method. However, he was well aware that the method of artifact refining was too mysterious. It required the control of true fire, proficiency in arrays, the use of refining materials, and so on. Only by combining all of these could one successfully refine an artifact that could increase the power of the artifact. "It's almost done." A sonorous voice came out of Tanxio's mouth. When the last piece of jade was thrown into the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron, his hands formed a seal. In just a dozen seconds, the last 1 foot long and 1/2 foot wide jade box flew out, and was put into his interspatial ring. Inside the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron, there was a mass of warm jade essence. After it floated in front of Tanxio, his hands quickly drew array patterns in the void. Visible rays of light connected the mass of sticky jade essence, and the array patterns kept pouring into it. Meteorite essence. Tanxio quickly glanced at Western Nefarious Sanga, and shouted in a deep voice. Western Nefarious Sanga suddenly sobered up from his sluggishness, and instantly threw his fist-sized meteorite essence to Tanxio. After Tanxio caught it, he threw it into the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron along with 2 fist-sized sky sandstones, and his last star fragment stone. Time flew by. Tanxio finally threw the jade essence back into the demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron. The entire demon god Spirit Devourer cauldron faintly trembled as the true fire suddenly soared and burned for a long time. Tanxio then waved his hand to remove the lid of the cauldron, and his whole body soared into the air. Tan Xiu executed the withdraw word, and a jade-green flute with a lustrous luster flew out of the demonic god spirit-devouring cauldron. Tan Xiu reached out and grabbed it. At this moment, Tang Xiu took out the bloodguzzler dagger and continued to carve on the jade flute in a flamboyant manner. A peerless and exquisite coiling dragon and phoenix pattern was formed. Whether it was the five-clawed dragon or the phoenix spreading its wings, they were all vivid and lifelike. Zhan. Tan Xiu sent the seal into the jade flute. Instantly, the jade flute shone brightly and was incomparably dazzling. Tan Xiu waved his hand to extinguish the true fire burning the flame talisman, and stored the demon god spirit devourer cauldron into his interspatial ring. After that, he looked at the jade flute in his hand with satisfaction. It was just a magic weapon, but after Tan Xiu engraved it with a special array, it was not an exaggeration to call it a magic flute with magical power. Western Nefarious Sangha, would you like to hear me play a tune for you? Tan Xiu turned around and asked with a faint smile. You can also play the flute? Western Nefarious Sangha was surprised. All right, I'll listen. Tan Xiu smiled indifferently and a melodious flute sound instantly floated out. The flute sound was very beautiful, graceful, and captivating. It was as though the fluttering notes were full of magical power, causing Western Nefarious Sangha to be involuntarily attracted by the flute sound. His mind gradually relaxed as his vision turned hazy, and finally appeared in a fairyland-like world. Addicted. It was as though endless temptation made Western Nefarious Sangha sink deep into it. A deep smile appeared in his blurred eyes. The wrinkles on his aged face smoothed out as a smile filled his face. Demonic attack. Tan Xiu shouted inwardly. The melodious flute sound suddenly changed from a graceful one to a violent storm, while the fairyland-like world in front of Western Nefarious Sangha also began to fall in an instant. The golden light shining in the sky was covered by black flames from all directions. Countless black fireballs filled with destructive power fell from the sky in a steady stream. The earth trembled and the rivers flowed backward. Everything beautiful in the world was shattered in an instant. Cracks formed on the ground as magma gushed out from the bottom of the earth. Countless humans, birds, and beasts living in this illusion wailed and screamed as they were swallowed and smashed. Ferocious Azura-like monsters descended from the sky, while riding destructive black fireballs. They held weapons and pounced on all the living beings in this world. Corpses were everywhere and blood flowed like rivers. Aararg. In the world outlined by the flute sound, Western Nefarious Sangha's relatives and friends were either swallowed by the merciless magma or smashed to death by the black fireballs. However, most of them were cruelly killed by those ferocious Azura monsters. In front of him, only his former child was left, who was about to be chopped to death by an Azura monster's blade. Grief, anger. It was as though a tide had engulfed him. Just as he raised his magic wand, wanting to protect his child, the world in front of him suddenly changed and his raised arms froze. Tan Xiu's flute sound stopped at this moment. He looked at Western Nefarious Sangha's angry face, as well as his raised hands, and indifferently smiled. The refining of this magic weapon can be considered successful. At least, the demonic sound can make you fall into an illusion. If there are other people around you at this time, it would be easy to kill you. Illusion? Western Nefarious Sangha's pupils contracted. His body swayed twice as he staggered back a few steps. He then looked at Tan Xiu in fear as though he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. That's right. If someone wanted to kill him just now, he absolutely wouldn't have sensed it. Even an ordinary person could have killed him countless times. How did you do it? Western Nefarious Sangha's voice was a bit hoarse as he asked with a face full of fear. It's just an insignificant skill. Tan Xiu lightly smiled and said, The flute song I played is called the Doomsday Song. It's a tune created by a devil cultivator, who is proficient in music after spending a lot of time and energy. Forget it. You won't understand it even if I explain it to you given your knowledge. Western Nefarious Sangha gulped down his saliva, and awkwardly let out a few hollow laughs. Ever since Tan Xiu came here with the two young men and women, he had been shocked by their endless means. Not to mention the strength and means of the two young men and women at the Golden Core stage, just Tan Xiu's refining technique alone made him look up to him. Whoosh, a pellet wrapped in wax paper was ejected. After Western Nefarious Sangha caught it, he looked at Tan Xiao and asked in astonishment, "What's this, boss?" Tan Xiao lightly smiled and said, "Since I'm borrowing your treasured land to refine weapons, I naturally have to give you some benefits. This is an essence amassing pill, which can increase your cultivation by half a cycle of 60 years after you take it. Unfortunately, I don't have any precious medicinal herbs, else I can easily refine an essence amassing pill that can increase my cultivation by 1 or 2 cycles. Half a cycle of 60 years? Increase my cultivation by 30 years? Western Nefarious Sangha's mind was greatly shaken, and his hand that was holding the essence amassing pill also trembled. Although he had taken a lot of precious herbs such as the Tianshan snow lotus, the hundreds of years old Polygonum multiflorum, and the nearly 1,000 years old Ganoderma lucidum, however, none of them could directly increase his cultivation by 30 years. What a treasure! Western Nefarious Sangha stared at the essence amassing pill in his hand with fiery eyes, wishing that he could swallow it immediately. However, with Tan Xiao in front of him, he forcibly suppressed his desire to take it and gratefully said, "Thank you for the reward, boss. No need to be so polite." Tan Xiao shook his head and smilingly said, "I told you that you'll get a lot of benefits as long as you sincerely submit to me. Alright, I've been staying here for a few days. It's time to leave." Western Nefarious Sangha quickly said, "Boss, if you need medicinal herbs, maybe I can give you some." Tan Xiao stared blankly for a moment, and then asked in astonishment, "You have precious medicinal herbs?" "There are not many things in the western regions, but there are a lot of precious medicinal herbs," said Western Nefarious Sangha seriously. "I even dug out a lot of medicinal herbs myself and planted them in a nearby cave. Usually, I only use them when I take a medicated diet, and I don't know anything about alchemy." Overjoyed, Tan Xiao immediately said, "Take me there to have a look." Understood. Western Nefarious Sangha left the cave with Tan Xiao. When he saw Guangzheng sitting cross-legged at the entrance of the cave, he nodded to him, and then flew halfway to the left side of the mountain. A minute later, the duo arrived in front of a pitch-black cave. As they entered, Tan Xiao was surprised to find that there were 6 fist-sized soul tranquilizer stones inlaid on the ceiling of the cave. The most ingenious thing was that there was a luminous pearl in the center of the 6 soul tranquilizer stones, whose milky white light illuminated the entire cave. "It's not an ordinary luminous pearl, but a solidified dragon's eye?" Tan Xiao suddenly turned his head and asked in a deep voice, "Did you arrange everything here?" Western Nefarious Sangha hurriedly shook his head and said, "No, I didn't arrange it. This place was already like this when I found it. I've spent a lot of effort and used various methods to get the 6 special ores and the luminous pearl, but I've never been able to get them. Since I found that the spiritual chi here is very rich, I transformed this place into a medicinal garden. You see, these are the herbs I planted. Some of them are seeds I found, and some are transplanted from other places." Tan Xiao had just seen that more than a dozen kinds of precious herbs were planted in the 1,000 square meter cave space, and all of them were very precious herbs. What surprised him the most was that there were several herbs that were hundreds of years old, and even 2 wild ginsengs that were thousands of years old. Very good, very good. Tan Xiao nodded with satisfaction. He waved his right arm as layers of airflow uprooted dozens of herbs, and put them into the jade box he had just refined. Western Nefarious Sangha was a bit excited upon hearing Tan Xiao's praise. He looked at Tan Xiao with fiery eyes, wanting to get more medicinal pills. "Go to Demonic City 2 months later," said Tan Xiao. "I'll give you a few more medicinal pills at that time." "That's right, I still have a holy healing pill here. I'll give it to you now." With that said, Tan Xiao threw a holy healing pill to Western Nefarious Sangha. He didn't take away all the herbs planted in this cave, because he could feel that the spiritual chi concentration here was very high, which was very suitable for the growth of these herbs. Chapter 647. The 6 soul-suppressing stones were embedded in the ceiling of the cave. Tan Xiao tried many methods, but he couldn't remove them. He couldn't even remove the solidified dragon's eye at the center. After his analysis, He finally determined that the 6 soul-suppressing stones and the solidified dragon's eye formed an incomparably mysterious array formation. Even though he had a very deep understanding of arrays, he still couldn't comprehend it. If it's meant to be, it will be. If it's not meant to be, don't force it. Tan Xiu looked at the soul-suppressing stone and the solidified dragon's eye and sighed, resentfully giving up on the idea of taking them away. If Gu Yenner's injury had not been healed, then even if he had to flatten the entire mountain, he had to get his hands on these 2 things. But now that Gu Yenner's injuries had been healed, even though the soul-suppressing stone was an excellent treasure, there was no need to rush to take it away. After leaving the cave, Tan Xiu didn't go back to Western Nefarious Sunga's Immortal Cave. Instead, he told him to keep an eye on Golden Armored Zombie and not do anything harmful to humans. Then he directly left with Light. Darkness, who was hiding in the dark, also followed them quietly. After the 3 returned to the off-road vehicle, Mo drove them back to the Longquan village. Tan Xiu, you're back. Miao Wentong and Xiao Mingjin, who had been waiting for several days, had already received a report from their subordinates when the 2 SUVs appeared outside the Longquan stronghold. Therefore, they hurriedly rushed out with a relieved expression. Tan Xiu smiled and said, "Don't worry. The problem was solved. Old brother Miao, Shipo is Western Nefarious Sunga's mistress, and the 2 of them have been colluding for nearly 100 years. Therefore, you shouldn't go looking for trouble with Shipo. Whether it's Shiva or Western Nefarious Sunga, none of them will dare to have any thoughts about you." Miao Wentong was dumbfounded. He didn't understand what Tan Xiu meant, but after hesitating for a moment he still asked, "What's going on?" Tan Xiu laughed and said, "I originally planned to kill him, but I didn't expect him to be so afraid of death. His courage is actually quite small. Thus, I spared his life and used a special method to control him. It can be said that his life is now in my hands, so he naturally wouldn't dare to harbor any ill intentions towards you. Western Nefarious Sunga's cultivation is so high, yet you can actually control him?" Miao Wentong was shocked. Tan Xiu smiled faintly and did not explain further. Although Miao Wentong was his friend and their relationship could be considered very close, it was far from the point where Miao Wentong would reveal his secret. All kinds of thoughts churned in Xiao Mingjin's mind. Seeing that Tan Xiu didn't want to mention this topic again, he immediately smiled and asked, "Now that the problem has been solved, shall we leave now?" Tan Xiu looked at Miao Wentong. Miao Wentong hesitated for a moment and then said, "I need to go back to Haiqing province first since the matter has been resolved. This time, a large number of my subordinates were killed. I need to take care of the aftermath." Tan Xiu nodded silently. After clearly asking Xiao Mingjin where they were going to Blue City, everyone no longer stayed, and directly left for Kana's airport. Outside the airport, Tan Xiu quietly stuffed a jade box into Miao Wentong's pocket and said in a low voice, "I hope you won't be angry with me for sparing Western Nefarious Sunga's life. This spirit-amassing pill can help your cultivation go to the next level, so you didn't come here in vain." Miao Wentong's expression moved. He realized that Tan Xiu didn't want Xiao Mingjin to know about the pill, so he immediately nodded without changing his expression. As a matter of fact, he did feel a bit uncomfortable inside when he learned that Tan Xiu not only didn't kill Western Nefarious Sunga, but also took him for his own use. Although his life was saved by Tan Xiu, the death of so many of his men was definitely a heavy loss. However, a single pill, a pill that could help him advance his cultivation to the next level, made his discomfort disappear like smoke in thin air. Half an hour later, Miao Wentong took his assistant and 2 bodyguards and left by plane. Xiao Mingjin also took a plane and rushed to Blue City. Tan Xiu didn't buy a plane ticket because he still had a favor to repay. As for Light and Dark, who came later, Tan Xiu gave them all the medicinal herbs he got back to Jingmen Island and handed them over to Ji Qimei to refine pills. Then he directly let them leave. "Jie Weili, it's me, Tan Xiu." After sitting in the Wrangler off-road vehicle, Tan Xiu dialed Jie Weili's number. "Hello, Mr. Tang. Are you done with your business?" Jie Weili said with a hearty smile. "I'm done, and my friends have left," said Tan Xiu. "I'll return your car to you on the way out of the airport. Tell me the address, I'll go find you now." After passing through the muddy dirt road, the bumpy gravel road, and even passing through more than a dozen dilapidated bridges, Tan Xiao and the others finally arrived at the place Jia Weili told them. Menka Horse Farm. Welcome, Mr. Tang. Jia Weili, who was wearing blue overalls and boots, had been waiting for a long time, warmly greeted them. Beside him, there were two burly men in strong suits. Tan Xiao let out a faint smile and shook hands with him, saying, "Well, it's impolite not to visit a friend when you come to Kana's. Jia Weili, you helped me for the sake of Uncle Yuan Zhengxian, but I, Tan Xiao, will still remember this favor. This is just a small gift to show my respect." The smile on Jia Weili's face increased a bit. He took the jade bottle handed over by Tan Xiao and said with astonishment, "What a good thing. This jade is of good quality and is exquisitely carved. It's definitely not an ordinary handicraft. Mr. Tang, your gift is too precious. I don't dare to accept it. Else, the old platoon leader will definitely scold me if he knows about it." Jade bottle? Tan Xiao looked at Jia Weili with a strange expression, and nearly burst into laughter. He suddenly recalled the story of buying the casket and returning the pearls and secretly felt that it was funny. However, he still said, "Jia Weili, you calling me Mr. Tang is too distant. If you don't mind, you can call me Tan Xiao or Brother Tang." Jia Weili quickly glanced at Mo Au and the others behind Tan Xiao. The smile on his face turned brighter, but he didn't take back the jade bottle. "Brother Tang." "Brother Jia." Tan Xiao also greeted him with a smile and then said, "As the saying goes, strangers at first and then become familiar with each other. This is the second time we've met. Putting aside our relationship with Uncle Yuan, we can be considered as friends. Isn't it natural for friends to exchange gifts?" Jia Weili could realize that Tan Xiao's identity was not ordinary. Even after seeing Tan Xiao, he called Yuan Zhengxian to inquire about Tan Xiao's identity. Yuan Zhengxian told him very little, but Tan Xiao, as the magnificent Tang Corporation's boss, still revealed it to him. Looking at Tan Xiao's sincere eyes, he nodded and smilingly said, "All right then, I'll accept it. Thank you, Brother Tang." "Brother Jia, this thing I'm giving you is not a jade bottle," Tan Xiao said with a smile. "It's the thing inside the jade bottle." Jia Weili stared blankly for a moment. Then he blushed and asked awkwardly, "There's something inside? What is it?" Having said that, he was about to open the bottle. Tan Xiao stopped him and smilingly said, "There's a drop of a special potion inside. Put this drop of potion into the water when you take a bath. It has a very good effect on improving your body. Remember, you must endure it even if your body is itchy and painful when you take a bath." Jia Weili listened to Tan Xiao's mysterious words and somewhat disapproved inwardly. Yet he still raised the jade bottle and smilingly said, "Then I'll give it a try when I take a bath. Come on, Brother Tang. Let's go inside and talk. This is a horse farm that I and a few friends of mine have recently started. If you're interested, I'll give you a good horse later." "A good horse?" Tan Xiao couldn't deny it, and only let out a faint smile. He didn't have much feelings for such animals as horses. If he wanted a mount, he could just casually stroll around Resting Cemetery Island and get himself a fierce beast. Fierce beasts were much stronger than those good horses. The two-story exquisite building was where the workers of the horse farm lived, while Jia Weili's office was located next to the stairs on the first floor. When Tan Xiao entered the office under Jia Weili's hospitality, his eyes instantly fell on the square table. Black winter wood? Tan Xiao's eyes were like torches. He instantly judged it through the texture and material of the square table. Despite having a lot of experience and knowledge, his heart skipped a beat at this moment. Black winter wood was definitely a treasure for some cultivators with special abilities. Furniture made of black winter wood could play a special role when it was engraved into an array. Among the wood materials, black winter wood was the most difficult to engrave into an array, yet it had the best effect after engraving it. When Tan Xiao was in the immortal world and his cultivation had yet to break through to the immortal stage, the place he lived at that time had a set of furniture made of black winter wood with a spirit amassing array engraved inside, making his mansion a treasure land. Even if he just sat on a chair, his cultivation speed would be nearly twice as fast as usual, accumulating spiritual power. This was the biggest feature of Black Winter Wood. "Brother Tang, please have a seat." Jia Weili warmly greeted Tan Xiu to sit down, and then personally brewed a pot of tea. After that, he said with a smile, "Brother Tang, I called my platoon leader after I sent you to Longquan Bay. I learned that you're actually the big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation. You're really amazing. I've tasted a few mouthfuls of the god's nectar produced by your magnificent Tang Corporation. It was bought by a rich and powerful man here with great difficulty. That taste and mellow flavor is simply the finest nectar. I still can't stop thinking about it." A smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth as he said, "Brother Jia, please send 2 men with me when I return to Star City. I'll tell them to bring back a few boxes of God's nectar when the time comes." Jia Weili's eyes lit up. He excitedly rubbed his hands and smilingly said, "That's great. Then I'll thank you very much, Brother Tang. If I can get a few boxes of God's nectar, I'll definitely have a lot of face when I treat my friends to a meal and drink." Tan Xiu glanced at the square table again and smilingly said, "Brother Jia, if you really like God's nectar, we can do a business together. I have another purpose in coming here." "What business?" asked Jia Weili quickly. Tan Xiu pointed to the square table and said, "That's the other purpose." "It?" Jia Weili was confused. "Table? Furniture?" Chapter 648. The udon wood was an unexpected discovery by Tang Xiu, and it was a pleasant surprise for him. After the idea of buying a lot of udon wood formed on the spur of the moment, he borrowed Jia Weili's love for God's nectar, and began to talk about the cooperation plan he came up with on the spur of the moment. "I want to buy this kind of wood for this square table." "Wood? Wood business?" Jia Weili looked at Tan Xiu with an astonished expression and immediately said with a smile, "We have a lot of yellow bark trees here. Its wood is very ordinary. Apart from being heavy, there's nothing good about it. Brother Tang, why do you want to buy this wood?" "I want to make furniture with enough weight," said Tan Xiu. "May I know the price of this wood here?" "It's not worth much. A ton of yellow bark tree wood costs about 1,600 yuan, said Jia Weili. "Brother Tang, just tell me how many tons of wood you need, and I'll give it to you for free. The logistics aspect is also easy. First, I'll use a truck to transport it, and then transport it to Star City. The price of a ton is only about 2,000 yuan. Tan Xiu never expected that the wood, which was very precious in the eyes of many cultivators in the immortal world, turned out to be so cheap on Earth. 2,000 yuan for a ton, and only 200,000 yuan for 100 tons. 500 tons. Apart from the 10 boxes of God's nectar I originally wanted to give to Brother Jia, I'll give you another 10 boxes. However, I'll send this wood to Guangyang's port." Jia Weili calculated the accounts in his mind. The price of God's nectar sold by the magnificent Tang Corporation was 18,888 yuan for a bottle, and a box of 6 bottles was more than 113,000 yuan. Thus, 20 boxes were worth more than 26 million yuan. The price of 500 tons of yellow bark tree wood, including the shipping cost, was probably only about 1 million yuan. The most important thing was that God's nectar was priceless. It was too difficult to buy God's nectar for a person from a remote area like him. Moreover, if he could get 20 boxes of God's nectar, it would be of great use. He could give them as gifts, and he could definitely please those government leaders or business partners. At that time, the money he could earn would be far more than 1 million yuan. He might even need to use tens of millions of yuan as a unit. "Brother Tang, if you can sell me 20 boxes of God's nectar every year, I'll personally handle the 500 tons of yellow bark tree wood for you and escort it to Guangyang's port. What do you think?" Jia Weili asked nervously. Tan Xiu smiled and said, "It's a deal." Lunch. Jia Weili entertained them with great hospitality at the stud farm. After the meal, he had planned to take Tan Xiu for a ride, but when he found that Tan Xiu was not in the mood, he invited Tan Xiu to his friend's hunting ground. The land here was vast and sparsely populated. Some of the mountains and forests were fenced up by some wealthy people. Through various channels, they finally obtained contracts and started a hunting business behind the scenes. Every year, many rich people would come to the hunting grounds to hunt, making the hunting grounds owners very rich. Tan Xiu did not have much interest in hunting, but when he learned that guns were used for hunting, he immediately changed his mind. He rarely had the opportunity to use a gun. Even though he had some guns in his spatial ring, they were all weapons he had obtained from killing enemies, so he rarely had the chance to use them. Then I'll have to trouble you, Brother Jia. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette and gave it to Jia Weili. Then he lit it up and took 2 puffs. Under Jia Weili's invitation, Tan Xiu sat in Jia Weili's car, whereas Mo and the others drove 4 Wrangler SUVs, while Jia Weili's 6 bodyguards drove 3 SUVs. A total of 7 cars left the stud farm. Kana's was one of the few pure lands on Earth in the world. Her beauty could not be captured by any superb photography, but even a picture taken casually would make people gasp in admiration. Not only was the place rich in natural resources and biological species, but it also had a unique tourism environment and cultural resources. Tan Xiu sat in the SUV and enjoyed the beautiful scenery along the way. He found that this place not only had the majestic scenery of the northern country, but also the delicate and beautiful scenery of Jiangnan. Brother Tang, that's Lake Kana's. It's also the place rumored to have the most lake monsters. Many people have said that they have seen water monsters there, but nobody knows how much of it is true. After driving the Wrangler SUV for more than an hour, Jia Weili pointed to the sparkling lake outside the window and said with a smile, "Lake monsters?" Tan Xiu's expression slightly moved. He guessed that it might be a psychic ominous beast. However, there were many ominous beasts in the famous mountains and rivers all over the world. Even the vast sea was unknown how many of them were hidden there, so he didn't have the idea to rush there to investigate. Seeing that Tan Xiu was indifferent and didn't show the slightest surprise, Jia Weili immediately showed off. The tranquil lake's surface is tranquil, but the deep lake's bottom hides a murderous aura. Is it a natural phenomenon that's hard to understand? Or is it a huge water monster bearing its fangs and brandishing its claws? No one can say for sure about these things. To tell you the truth, I once had the idea to investigate this mysterious water monster, but I've been too lazy these years. I'm too busy with business when I'm not. If Brother Jia believes me, then it's best not to investigate this water monster, Tan Xiu said lightly. There are all kinds of strange things in the boundless world, but people only have one life. In case there really is a water monster, the chance of survival is very small. Jia Weili stared blankly for a moment before he couldn't help laughing and said, "Brother Tang's words are so incisive. I'm a bit reckless. What's that classic saying again? Curiosity kills the cat." Ha ha ha, that's right. That's the saying. Tan Xiu let out a faint smile and didn't say anything more. After driving for 2.5 hours, the 7 Wrangler SUVs finally arrived near a mountain forest. At the end of the muddy path was a majestic manor gate. The 4 security guards standing in front of the gate were all bearded, stocky, and aggressive. Although they were holding electric batons in their hands, their waists were bulging. It was obvious that they were carrying knives or guns. "Ha ha, welcome my friend. Brother Jia Weili. It seems that you haven't come to my hunting ground for a long time, no?" A voice as loud as a bell rolled over. After an SUV drove out from the inside, a middle-aged man with braided hair and a fur coat strode over. 2 bodyguards followed behind him, each with fierce and ferocious faces. Jia Weili strode forward to greet him and gave him a big hug. Then he smiled and said, "Brother Gesangger, I also want to come here often to have fun, but the business is too troublesome for me, so I've been very busy all the time. Well, a guest from afar came to me, so I brought him here to have fun. Let me introduce you to this little brother. His name is Tan Xiu, introduced by my former platoon leader." "Yuan Zhengxian?" Gesangger raised his brows and looked at Tan Xiu. Then he stepped forward and stretched out his hand, saying with a smile, "Welcome, Brother Tang. I'm Gesangger, the owner of this hunting ground." "Nice to meet you, Big Brother Gesangger," said Tan Xiu with a smile. Gesangger nodded in response. His eyes swept over Mo and the others who got off the Wrangler SUV. He instantly determined that Tan Xiu's identity in the mainland was not simple. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to bring so many bodyguards with him. "Let's get in the car. I'll entertain you with good wine and meat inside." The car drove a few kilometers and then stopped in front of several two-story buildings. After everyone got off, they directly walked to the central two-story building and entered the luxuriously decorated living room. Immortal was the only one who came in. The other 10 people stayed outside. As the wine and meat were served, Jia Weili smilingly asked, "Brother Gessenger, there should be very few guests this season, right? After all, it's just the beginning of the year." "There were indeed not many at this time in the past," said Gessenger with a smile. "But this year is very strange. More than a dozen groups of guests have come here since 3 days ago. Nearly half of the guest rooms in my hunting ground villa are occupied. Speaking of which, the mainlanders are getting richer and richer. They spend money like water here. Each and every one of them wants the best service and the most exciting hunting experience. So to say, your business here is really good," said Jia Weili with an astonished expression. "Let's not talk about them." Gessenger waved and smilingly said, "Where did Brother Tang come from in the mainland? What kind of business do you have?" "Shuangqing Province's Star City," said Tan Xiao with a faint smile. "I'm in the liquor, cosmetics, and health products business." Gessenger nodded and didn't ask any other questions. Nowadays, there were all kinds of businesses and all kinds of rich people. As the owner of this place, he only needed to entertain the guests. The reason for the 2 questions just now was because Tan Xiao was a friend brought by Jia Weili. "Come, let's have some wine and meat. I'll personally take you to the armory to choose weapons after we're full." Many wild beasts have entered hibernation in this cold weather, but many of them will come out to hunt and forage for food. If you're lucky, you may even encounter the bears in the back mountain. Tan Xiao and Jia Weili had drunk a lot of wine before, but facing Gessenger's hospitality, he didn't refuse and gulped down wine and meat, showing his cool personality. Therefore, he won Gessenger's admiration. "Get out of the way. I want to see Gessenger." A rough voice came from outside the door. Even when they were drinking, there was a commotion outside the door. Gessenger's thick black brows furrowed as he shouted at the door, "Let the guests come in. If they want to drink with me, I'll give them as much as they want." Immediately, the door was forcefully pushed open from the outside as 2 young men followed by 4 bodyguards came in. One of them was a white-haired young man with a gold chain around his neck. He didn't even glance at Tan Xiao and Jia Weili. His eyes were locked on Gessenger as he shouted, "Gessenger, you must rent the crossbow bolts in your warehouse to me. I can pay 10 times the price." The other young man glanced around the room. When he saw Tan Xiao, his pupils suddenly shrunk and his body slightly shivered a few times. He subconsciously touched his face and instantly grabbed the arm of the white-haired young man. Chapter 649. The white-haired youth stared blankly for a moment, and turned to look at his companion with a surprised expression. What surprised him was that his companion, who had always been fearless, was now faintly pale. Following his companion's gaze, his eyes fell on Tan Xiao. What a coincidence! Tan Xiao's expression was tranquil, and his words were casual. He didn't expect that he would meet an old acquaintance in such a remote western region. Moreover, this old acquaintance of his had once been brutally beaten up by him. The white-haired youth pointed at Tan Xiao and asked his companion next to him, "Do you know this brat Wang Hu?" The burly Wang Hu hesitated for a moment, but eventually nodded. After the look of horror disappeared, it was replaced by resentment. Back in Jingmen Island, he and Li Xiueming, the young master of the brilliant group, were beaten by Tan Xiao in the Regent Entertainment Club. The reason was because of Ouyang Lulu, the eldest daughter of the Ouyang family in Jingmen Island. That time, he was kicked out of Jingmen Island, which became the biggest humiliation he had suffered since he was a child. He had been wanting to take revenge for countless days and nights. Although his Wang family had a deep influence in the Northwest, it was not enough in Jingmen Island. Not to mention that the Ouyang family was much more powerful than his Wang family, so it was obviously unrealistic to seek revenge from them. Yet, he firmly remembered Tan Xiao, the guy who had beaten him into a pig's head. He was looking forward to meeting him again one day to wipe away his shame. Never once did he expect that he would meet Tan Xiao here, nor did he expect that the first time he saw Tan Xiao would give rise to fear. This fear made him feel deeply humiliated. Upon hearing the white-haired youth's inquiry, Wang Hu angrily glared at Tan Xiao and said, "Enemy." The white-haired youth rolled his eyes and snappily said, "Since he's an enemy, why don't we just kill him directly? It's easy to destroy the corpse and erase the evidence here." Wang Hu's expression changed slightly. Then, a pleasantly surprised expression appeared on his face. That was because he knew that his companion was right. If he killed someone in the remote western regions, he could just casually toss the body somewhere else. Even if the body decomposed into mud, it would be very difficult for others to find it. He knew that Tan Xiao was very strong, but his companions who came here with him were all experts of the celestial sect of wonders. Any one of them would have countless ways to kill Tan Xiao. As he thought of this, Wang Hu took a step forward and coldly looked at Tan Xiao and shouted, "You bastard surnamed Tang, you never thought we would meet here, did you? There was a path to heaven, but you didn't take it. There was no door to hell, but you came willingly. I, Wang Hu, guarantee that you will walk out of this room with your back to the wall today." Tan Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, "Do you still remember how miserable your ending was when you threatened me last time? Could it be that dogs really can't stop eating shit? Do you really want me to teach you a lesson again? Surname Tang, haven't you heard the saying that a scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at with a whole new level? This father is now a member of the Celestial Sect of Wonders. Though I know you have some lousy skills, it's just a matter of minutes for this father to kill you now." A member of the Celestial Sect of Wonders? Tan Xiao slightly furrowed his brows. His eyes fell on the white-haired youth and lightly asked, "Who are you?" "Xian Yugu." The white-haired youth proudly replied. "Never heard of you," replied Tan Xiao indifferently. Xian Yugu's complexion changed. He glared at Tan Xiao and cursed, "You're courting death. Presumptuous." As the owner of the hunting ground, Gesangger suddenly grabbed the hunting knife at the side and fiercely stabbed it on the table. He suddenly got up and shouted, "I don't care what kind of grievances you have. In short, you must follow the rules of my hunting ground. Unless you sign a life and death contract and go to the back mountain to fight for your life, no one is allowed to fight privately here." "Humph, Gesangger, it's better to have less troubles than less troubles." Xian Yugu coldly snorted. Gesangger slammed the table. His other hand grabbed a pitch-black thumb ring and quickly put it on his left thumb. Then he angrily said, "If this sentence was spoken by the sect masters of the Celestial Sect of Wonders, I'd be a bit afraid. But you dare to say such words? Believe it or not, I'll tear your dog mouth apart." "Ink thumb ring?" Xian Yugu's pupils contracted and he staggered back a few steps. The people of the Celestial Sect had a consensus that the most powerful sect master or patriarch of the sects and families recognized by all the Celestial Sect forces would be given an ink thumb ring. Initially, he was just an ordinary person, but now he turned out to be a member of the Celestial Sect. Most importantly, he was also the sect master of a powerful force. Wang Hu had just become a member of the Celestial Sect not long ago, so he naturally didn't know about this matter. However, seeing Xian Yugu's frightened expression, he faintly guessed that Gesangger had a special identity. His enemy was not Gesangger, so he didn't have much fear. He quickly came to Xian Yugu's side and whispered a few words. After Xian Yugu nodded and agreed, he looked at Tan Xiao and sneered, "Surname Tang, I believe you've heard the hunting master's words just now. The enmity between us must be solved. If you have the guts, let's sign a life and death contract and go to the back mountain to fight each other. Whoever loses will lose his life in the back mountain. And whoever wins can come out alive. Do you dare?" "Brother Tang." Jia Weili finally spoke. He even regretted bringing Tan Xiao to the hunting ground. Tan Xiao wouldn't have met his enemy if he hadn't come here. "Brother Jia, this is my personal enmity with him." Tan Xiao shook his head and smilingly said, "Just watch a good show. I'll sign the life and death contract, but shouldn't you tell me the rules?" Before Wang Hu could speak, Xian Yugu shouted with a sullen face, "Each side will send 3 people to the back mountain to risk their lives. It doesn't matter if you use a spear or a saber. Only when all 3 people on the other side are dead can the winner come out from the back mountain." "I accept." Tan Xiao straightly got up and looked at Gesangor with a smile. Big brother Gesangor, I'll have to trouble you to take us to the hunting grounds armory. After all, we're going to risk our lives, so we'll have to choose some good weapons. If we can't come out and continue drinking with you, that would be a sin. Gesangor squinted his eyes and deeply observed Tan Xiao. Then he pulled out his hunting knife and said aloud, If that's the case, then let's go to the armory. Surnamed Xian Brat, didn't you want to rent a crossbow? Nobody can snatch it from you. Half an hour later, Tan Xiao took the shotgun he picked from the armory and stood at the entrance of the mountain trail. The back mountain was not very high, and the highest peak was only 100 or 200 meters. The life and death contract had been signed, so he would take Mo Ao and another expert to climb the mountain. A few meters away from them, Wang Hu and Xian Yugu stood side by side. Behind them was a middle-aged man holding a miaodao. The middle-aged man looked ordinary and had a very strange aura. Even though Tan Xiao had a good cultivation, he couldn't hear the man's breathing if he didn't listen carefully. At this time, the guests who came to the hunting ground were all invited out from the back mountain. The number of people who came here was nearly 100. Tan Xiao was very surprised because he found something unusual. Among these people, there were two whom he had seen before. It was at the underground auction in the imperial capital, and one of them even competed with him for auction items. Most of the others had a strange aura, and some of them were wearing amulets that he personally refined. It seems that most of these people are from the Celestial sect. But what's the purpose of gathering so many people from the Celestial sect here? Tan Xiao secretly pondered. Let's go into the mountain. Gesangor obviously knew the identity of Xian Yugu and the middle-aged man behind Xian Yugu. Even he was a little afraid of him. Therefore, he faintly sighed in his heart and looked at Tan Xiao with some pity in his eyes. Ordinary people, even if they were very powerful in martial arts, would probably be out of luck if they met someone from the Celestial sect. He firmly believed that the chances of Tan Xiao coming out alive was very slim. Not only him, but even the nearly 100 people from the Celestial sect also obviously knew Xian Yugu. They looked at Tan Xiao as if they were looking at a dead man. What a pity! A dignified young divine doctor, not only did he not honestly practice medicine, he even provoked the people from the Celestial sect. Isn't this courting death? That Tan Xiao is dead this time. The one beside Xian Yugu is the law enforcement hall master of the Serenity sect. I heard that he once had a fortuitous encounter. Coupled with the secret technique of the Serenity sect, he's now almost invulnerable. I've seen him fight with others. He's very strong. Unless those old monsters from the Celestial sect take action, no one can do anything to him. Stupid. Challenging the people from the Celestial sect is simply courting death. Alas, Tan Xiao had keen hearing. Even if those people's voices were very low and there was some distance between them, he could still hear them clearly. He sneered inwardly, but he remained calm and collected on the surface as he took the two men straight to the mountain road. 10 minutes later, Tan Xiao stood on a big tree, quietly observing the nearby wind blowing and grass swaying. He would never take any enemy lightly, because he had seen too many people and things that failed miserably in the gutter. They're coming. Through the gaps between the branches, Tan Xiao saw a figure flashing in the distance. He pointed in that direction and said, "Oh, leave those two brats alive and bring them here to see me. As for the other guy, kill him." Mo Ao nodded and his figure instantly disappeared from the spot. In the mountain forest 100 meters away, Xian Yugu and Wang Hu looked very relaxed as though they were on a sightseeing tour. Occasionally, they would vigilantly glance around. The middle-aged man next to them was particularly vigilant. Any rustling of grass in the wind could arouse his vigilance. Puff, puff. A hazy figure flashed in front of the trio as the sharp blade of the dagger swept Wang Hu and Xian Yugu's right wrists. Blood splashed as the guns in their hands fell. Fuck off. The middle-aged man's complexion greatly changed. He raised the miaodao in his hand and fiercely slashed it toward the figure's shadow. The whistling sound of the wind was heard as the blade missed its target. At this time, a hand pinched the back of the middle-aged man's neck. It's been a long time since I last burst out. Today, I'll burst out a little bit. I'm begging for monthly votes and recommendation votes to support me. Chapter 650. The middle-aged man was the hall master of the Serenity Sect's law enforcement hall. He was one of the top 5 experts in the entire Serenity Sect, especially with his copper skin and iron bones. Ordinary pistols wouldn't even be able to pierce through his skin. At this moment, however, he was scared out of his wits as fear enveloped his heart like a tidal wave. How is this possible? Feeling a big hand clutching his neck like an iron pincer, the middle-aged man no longer dared to move, fearing that the other party would break his neck with a little force. Puff! The sharp dagger easily pierced his back. The piercing pain from the dagger's tip filled the middle-aged man with despair. He couldn't figure out how his sturdy physique, which he was so proud of, could be pierced by a knife. An ordinary knife couldn't pierce through his skin at all. Moa twitched the dagger as he looked at Wang Hu and Xianyugu, who were screaming in pain. He casually punched the middle-aged man and coldly said, "If you dare to bend your waist again, I guarantee that it won't just be your right hand that will be chopped off." Wang Hu and Xianyugu froze as they looked at the guns that fell to the ground. A chill ran down their spines. Never in their wildest dreams did they expect that their powerful bodyguard would be so easily beaten away. Judging from his blood-stained back, his heart should have been pierced, and he probably wouldn't be able to live. It's over. Both men were filled with despair and intense regret. Moa didn't waste any more time. He flashed and appeared in front of them. After grabbing their necks, he flashed to Tan Xiu's front and casually threw the 2 men in front of Tan Xiu as though he was throwing garbage, saying, "Mission accomplished, boss." Tan Xiu nodded with satisfaction and looked at Wang Hu and Xianyugu, who were thrown on the ground. A mocking smile appeared on the corner of his mouth as he lightly said, "Now you know the fate of going against me, right? You've signed the life and death agreement, so it's only right for me to kill you." Wang Hu tried to get up with great difficulty. He used his arms to prop himself up from the ground. When he heard Tan Xiu's words, his expression changed drastically. His body trembled violently a few times before he fell to the ground again. Xianyugu, on the other hand, had some courage. He crawled back a few steps and shouted with a bit of fear, "Surname Tang, you can't kill me." Tan Xiu sneered. "Why can't I kill you? Is it because you're from the Serenity Sect?" Xianyugu's pupils contracted as he exclaimed, "You know about the Serenity Gate?" Suddenly he realized something and shouted again, "Since you know about the Serenity Sect, you should know the strength of the Serenity Sect. I am the son of the sect master of the Serenity Sect, and also his only son. If you dare to kill me, you will become the enemy of the entire Serenity Sect." Tan Xiu pointed at Wang Hu and asked, "What about him? Who is he?" Xianyugu's courage seemed to have grown a lot stronger. He puffed out his chest and said, "He's Chess Saintess Linglong's new disciple, so he's also a member of the occult sect. You should have heard of Chess Saintess Linglong, right? She's the elder sister of the Jin family's patriarch. Her Chiman Duanjia skill has reached the acme of perfection. If you kill us, it's tantamount to provoking the Serenity Sect and the Jin family at the same time." Tan Xiu rolled his eyes and sneered. "Your Serenity Sect even dares to kill my people. Do you think I'll be afraid of your Serenity Sect? The Jin family? I've never heard of it. All right, cut the crap. I can spare your puny lives, but you need to answer me a few questions." Xianyugu had been living a luxurious life since he was a child. He got wind and rain whenever he wanted, so when had he ever suffered such humiliation? Under the influence of his young master's temper, he angrily said, "Don't put on airs. You killed my Serenity Sect's law enforcement hall's master. It's not impossible to resolve this enmity if you can come up with enough compensation. But if you dare to kill me, are you threatening me?" Tan Xiu looked at Xianyugu as though he was looking at an idiot. With a flick of his wrist, the blood guzzler dagger instantly cut off his entire left arm. Amidst his shrill screams, Tan Xiu shifted to Wang Hu and lightly said, "Tell me, what is the purpose of so many people from the occult sect coming here?" Wang Hu looked at Xianyugu's arm being cut off in fear. He crawled up and said with a trembling voice, "It's the immortal trove left behind by Taoist Tu Yang after he passed away." "Immortal trove? Taoist Tu Yang? Who is this Taoist Tu Yang?" asked Tan Xiu with a frown. "I don't know. My master didn't tell me." Wang Hu shook his head. "She just brought me here and let me live directly in the hunting ground. What about your master? Asked Tan Xiao again. I don't know. Wang Hu shook his head again. Only the seniors of the occult sect know the location of this immortal trove, so a large number of them went there and left us here. Tan Xiao nodded. It was normal that Wang Hu didn't know about the existence of this immortal trove, given his identity. It would be abnormal if his master even told him about this. Therefore, his eyes fell on Xian Yugu again and coldly said, Tell me the location of this immortal trove. I'll give you two choices. Tell me and you'll live, but you'll die if you don't. Xian Yugu was really scared. He just thought that Tan Xiao was bluffing, but now he no longer thought so. He felt that Tan Xiao was a ruthless and merciless bastard. He didn't want to die. He still had a great youth and countless wealth. He even had to inherit the position of the sect master of the Serenity sect in the future. He would have nothing left if he died now. Besides, a large number of experts from the Serenity sect had gone to the location of this immortal trove. What could he do even if he told Tan Xiao? As long as he dared to go there, he would most likely be besieged by a group of people, and only death awaited him. I said it's in Longquan Bay. Longquan Bay? Tan Xiao looked surprised. He just came from Longquan Bay not long ago and didn't encounter anyone from the occult sect, right? Furthermore, Western Nefarious Sangha's lair was in the Longquan Bay area. If those people from the occult sect entered Longquan Bay, wouldn't he be the first to find them? At this time, at Longquan Bay, Western Nefarious Sangha's eyes were bloodshot as he brandished his long saber with all his might. After he slashed and pushed back more than a dozen people from the occult sect who were besieging him, he was attacked by countless hidden weapons. Explode! An old voice sounded. Along with the countless hidden weapons, a talisman suddenly burst out with a sea of fire that instantly enveloped Western Nefarious Sangha. Although this raging flame talisman was not a big threat to Western Nefarious Sangha, his body was still hit by many hidden weapons in order to rush out of the sea of fire. Bastard! Western Nefarious Sangha patted his waist. Two bloodthirsty chiropterans whizzed out, and turned into two balls of flames that pounced toward the dozen people. However, it was at this moment that 8 senile old men, who reeked of decay, dashed forward like lightning. They threw out large nets at the same time, and with ingenious coordination, they caught each other. The 8 nets were caught by the 8 old men, and as they swam about with marvelous footwork, the flames on the two bloodthirsty paleobats' bodies were extinguished like a tide. Squeak squeak. Screams came from the two bloodthirsty chiropterans' mouths. They struggled desperately but couldn't escape the 8 nets. Even their steel-like bodies were cut with bloody wounds as they struggled. Bastards! Western Nefarious Sangha's complexion greatly changed. He instantly appeared in front of the 8 old men, and brandished the long saber in his hand to fiercely slash at them. Shield! The 8 old men looked dignified as they shouted the same word in unison. In an instant, they gathered together in 4 groups and pulled out strange shields from their waists. In an instant, they assembled into a 2-meter-long and 1-meter-wide large shield. Western Nefarious Sangha's saber light fiercely slashed the shield. Bam! The 8 old men spurted out blood at the same time as their bodies were sent flying backward at the same time. Western Nefarious Sangha's pupils shrunk, and the long saber in his hand flew out. He groaned as a mouthful of blood gushed out from his throat, but he forcefully swallowed it back. Magic tools! You damned occult sect people! How come you have magic tools? Western Nefarious Sangha furiously roared. He was very sullen because more than half of the 48 people gathered here had already attacked him, and the number of magic tools they had unleashed had reached 3. Ha ha ha! A loud and sonorous laughter came from a kilometer away as golden-armored zombie flew extremely fast, and appeared in front of everyone in just a few breaths. Western Nefarious Sangha, I've already warned you that you can't keep the Immortal Trove. I've guessed that such a day would come after those 2 thieves stole the Immortal Trove catalog 60 years ago. I don't get it. I really don't get it. Why didn't you tell him about the Immortal Trove when your life is in his hands? Golden-armored zombie asked in a clear voice. Shut the hell up! Western Nefarious Sangha angrily shouted. I didn't tell him because I had my own considerations. My life is in his hands now, but as long as I open the entrance to the Immortal Trove, Would I still need to worry about breaking the restriction on my body in the future? Golden armored zombie, don't forget our deal. If anyone dares to covet the immortal trove, we'll protect them together. I haven't forgotten. Golden armored zombie nodded and said, but that damned old hag Shiva hasn't appeared yet. Did she die on the way? You old corpse. This old hag won't die even if you die. Along with a sharp female voice, a woman who looked to be in her 20s flew over quickly amidst the fluttering colorful clouds. Western Nefarious Sangha was delighted and burst into laughter. Good, good, good. The three of us are finally together. I really don't know who gave these damned occult sect people the courage to covet the immortal trove. Didn't those two bastards who stole the immortal trove catalog tell them who we are? Indeed they didn't. A faintly discernible voice came from the surrounding nothingness. Two sword-riding old men with sage-like appearances appeared after Shiva in the blink of an eye. They looked at the 48 occult sect people with satisfaction, and then shifted their eyes to Western Nefarious Sangha's trio. It's been 60 years since we last met. Did the three of you miss us, brothers? The old man with a broken arm on the left had a warm smile on his aged face, while a slender green snake was coiled on his unscathed right arm. Upon seeing the two old men, Western Nefarious Sangha's baleful aura skyrocketed, and he angrily roared, Jin Sanchi, Jin Sijia, you two damned bastards. Why haven't you died yet? Chapter 651. Kana's Hunting Ground. Tan Xiao fiddled with the bloodguzzler dagger, and coldly looked at Xianyugu. In his mind, the cave where Western Nefarious Sangha planted medicinal herbs, the soul tranquilizer stone and the solidified dragon's eye appeared. Could it be? The immortal trove was there? If so, why didn't Western Nefarious Sangha tell him? Did he know? Or did he deliberately conceal it? Tan Xiao pondered for a moment and slowly said, Wang Hu, right? Xianyugu, right? You two are not good people. You belong to the type I hate very much. I, Tan Xiao, am a man of my word to good people, but I go back on my word to bad people. So remember to be good people in your next life. The bloodguzzler dagger flew out lightning fast, and easily cut off their heads before returning to Tan Xiao's hand. After a while, Tan Xiao left with the two men. At the foot of the mountain, Jia Weili was burning with anxiety and worry. He was looking forward to Tan Xiao coming back alive. Not to mention his deal with Tan Xiao, just the relationship between Tan Xiao and the old platoon leader was something he didn't want to see happen to Tan Xiao while they were together. Brother Jia Weili, listen to my advice. You must leave now. If Tan Xiao is killed on the mountain and the other party survives, I'm afraid they'll attack you again given their character as long as they find out that Tan Xiao came with you. You don't know how terrifying they are. Gassangger looked at Jia Weili's appearance and secretly sighed inwardly as he advised in a low voice. Jia Weili was silent for a moment. With a firm look in his eyes, he shook his head and said, Brother Tang was introduced by the old platoon leader. Even if I can't help him now, I must wait for the result. If he dies, I'll collect his corpse. If he's still alive, I'll give him a celebration. You're still as stubborn as before. Gassangger shook his head and forced a smile. Forget it. Stay here since you want to. As long as the outcome of their battle is decided before those old guys come back, I can guarantee you to collect Tan Xiao's corpse safely. Thank you. Jia Weili's heart continued to sink as he squeezed out an ugly smile to express his thanks. However, before he could finish speaking, his eyes were filled with ecstasy as he stared fixedly at the three people coming down from the mountain path. Gassangger stared blankly for a moment. He turned his head to look at the mountain road and exclaimed in disbelief, What's going on? Duh. Why did they come down? Where are those three fellows? In the surroundings, nearly 100 people from the celestial sect of wonders were in an uproar. They did not expect that the people who came down were actually Tan Xiao and the other two, while Xianyugu and the other two were nowhere to be seen. Could it be that they were killed by Tan Xiao and the other two? How was this possible? My God. Look at the last one. He's holding two heads in his hands. A cry of surprise suddenly burst out from the crowd. In an instant, everyone's eyes widened as they looked at the three figures getting closer and closer. After seeing the two heads in the hands of the everlasting feast hall's expert, they recognized them as Wang Hu and Xian Yugu's heads. This indicated that Wang Hu and Xian Yugu were dead. Is that person from the Serenity Sect's law enforcement hall a good for nothing? How could he watch Xian Yugu get killed? Where's that guy? There's only Xian Yugu and Wang Hu's heads. Where's the other one? It's incredible. I never thought that the final winner would be the young divine Dr. Tan Xiao. He, or should I say, what's the origin of his two bodyguards? I'm afraid something big is about to happen in the occult sect. There's gonna be a good show to watch. Under countless incredulous gazes, Tan Xiao came before Gesangger and Jia Weili. He nodded to Jia Weili and immediately looked at Gesangger, saying, "The matter of the occult sect's people should be solved by the means of the occult sect. I've killed them, so I'm the final winner." With a complicated expression, Gesangger silently nodded and said, "You've indeed won. But I'm afraid you'll have to bear the wrath of the Serenity sect and the Jin family. I've already prepared myself since I dared to kill them." Tan Xiao sneered. "However, we still have other things to do, so we won't stay here for long." "That's right, I killed a hare with a shotgun on my way back. I'll leave it for you to eat and drink." Gesangger forced a wry smile inwardly and said, "Let's go. You've killed several of them, so staying here will only lead to a dead end. You should leave early so that I won't get into trouble here. Jia Weili, let's drink a few cups and taste this hare meat." "I'm leaving too," said Jia Weili quickly. "I still have something important to tell you." "You must stay," said Gesangger with a frown. Tan Xiao shot a deep look at Gesangger. He realized that Gesangger's intention to force Jia Weili to stay was to draw a clear line between him and Jia Weili, so that when the Serenity sect and the Jin family retaliate against him, they would also hate Jia Weili out of jealousy. Therefore, he indifferently smiled and said, "Since the two brothers have important things to discuss, then I'll take my leave. Let's keep in touch later." After saying that, he didn't give Jia Weili a chance to speak again, and quickly left with Mo Ao and the others. He didn't even drive a car when he left the hunting ground. When everyone in the hunting ground couldn't see them, Tan Xiao silently chanted an incantation. A wave of air seemed to turn into a rope that wrapped around the waists of Mo Ao and the others. Then he pulled them to the sky and flew toward the direction of Western Nefarious Sangha's Immortal Cave in Longquan Bay. Longquan Bay. Western Nefarious Sangha stood outside the cave entrance, glaring at the two brothers Jin Sanchi and Jin Sijia, with a murderous aura. If his eyes could kill, he would have killed them 1,000 times at this time. The one-armed old man Jin Sanchi lazily said, "Western Nefarious Sangha, good people don't live long, while scourges last for thousands of years. I believe us two brothers are scourges in your eyes, no? It's a pity that we didn't poison you in the past, else we wouldn't have needed such a big fanfare today." Shiva took a step forward and covered her mouth with a smile. "Jin Sanchi, I really don't get it. Since you two brothers are coveting the immortal trove, why do you want to involve the occult sect's people? There are indeed some powerful characters among them who have broken through the shackles of martial arts and entered the Tao through martial arts to reach the foundation establishment stage. But do you think they can really help you? Or perhaps, you two brothers brought them here on purpose to send them to their deaths?" Jin Sanchi's expression slightly changed and he sneered. "Shiva, I didn't expect that you haven't made any progress after all these years as Western Nefarious Sangha's mistress. This kind of inferior means of sowing discord is useless against us. Since I brought them here, I have my reasons for bringing them here." "That's right, Western Nefarious Sangha just tasted their fierceness. Am I right? It's Western Nefarious Sangha." With a gloomy expression, Western Nefarious Sangha said in a low voice, "Be careful, you two. These damned occult sects people unexpectedly have several magic tools. I just suffered some internal injuries due to my carelessness." An incredulous look appeared on Shiva's face as he exclaimed, "What kind of magic tool can actually injure you?" "It's a very evil magic tool." Western Nefarious Sangha forced a smile and said, "Aside from the temporary shield, the other two magic tools are very destructive." "That's right, be careful of their talismans. They have the Raging Flame talisman, which is quite powerful. It's a pity that the bloodthirsty cubits I've been raising for many years were trapped by their net." You should have destroyed those 2 bloodthirsty cubits a long time ago, said Shiva without hesitation. Feeding them with your life's essence and blood will not only affect your cultivation speed, but you'll also die miserably if they turn on you one day in the future. Let's not talk about this first, said Western Nefarious Sangha indifferently. Since they dare to come here, it means that they are well prepared. Fortunately, he left, else we'd be in trouble if we were to meet him. Who is it? Asked Shiva doubtfully. Golden armored zombie at the side said with a gloating tone. Your mistress is very unlucky, Shiva. He was almost killed by someone. Later on, the other party placed a restriction on his body and controlled his life. This seat has finally witnessed what it means to say, men die in pursuit of wealth, just as birds die in pursuit of food. For the sake of the immortal trove, he even dared to hide it from him. I hope this matter won't be exposed in the future, otherwise. Ahaha. Western Nefarious Sangha was a bit annoyed as he fiercely glared at Golden Armored Zombie and shouted, If you hadn't betrayed me and told them my hiding place, I would have been ahead. Jin Sanchi and Jin Sijia, the 2 brothers, looked at each other in dismay. They never thought that Western Nefarious Sangha would be nearly killed by someone else. Not only that, someone even placed a restriction inside his body and controlled his life. Who was that person? Western Nefarious Sangha was already very powerful, so how could the other party be more powerful than him? Besides, wasn't there still Golden Armored Zombie? Would he just watch the other party clean up Western Nefarious Sangha? However, Jin Sanchi didn't feel like asking anymore and shouted in a deep voice, Western Nefarious Sangha, I'll give the 3 of you a chance to live. Surrender obediently and help us open the immortal trove. Otherwise, the 3 of you will die miserably. Western Nefarious Sangha sneered. Nonsense. Anyone who covets the immortal trove must die. A kilometer away, Tan Xiao, along with Mo'au and the others, quietly landed in the woods. After ordering the 11 people to stay and wait, he turned into a breeze and quietly lurked toward the immortal cave where Western Nefarious Sangha was located. From afar, he saw a lot of people gathered there. Western Nefarious Sangha, Golden Armored Zombie, and a woman were confronting many people. After a while, Tan Xiao hid in the bushes 400 to 500 meters away and quietly observed those people. He could even vaguely hear their conversation from where he stood. Immortal Trove. There really is an immortal trove. Western Nefarious Sangha didn't tell me about it. Obviously, he has some selfish motives. Or rather, he has other plans. A murderous intent flashed in Tan Xiao's eyes. The soul-ruling art had a special effect. That was, the person being controlled would be very loyal. But, it was an extremely rare exception when used on Western Nefarious Sangha. Tan Xiao had an outstanding mind, and could easily guess that there must be a problem here. Chapter 652. The real winner relied on absolute strength, while the real powerhouses believed in the power of their fists. When enemies met on a narrow path, only the brave one who staked everything on one throw could win. Words. At this time, they could only complement each other with their momentum, but they couldn't make a final conclusion. Western Nefarious Sangha, Golden Armored Zombie, and Shiva were not pushovers. Their cultivation was high and their strength was formidable. Even if they were to face enemies dozens of times their size, they were not afraid at all. The immortal trove. He must protect it because it was a great opportunity for them, and the key to their strength to the next level. If these covetous people wanted to get it, they would have to step over their dead bodies. Stubborn and impossibly stupid. If we don't have a foolproof plan, do you 3 really think we would dare to come here and snatch the immortal trove? In order to put pressure on the 3 of them, Jin Sanchi flipped his hand and took out a big flag. It was a golden flag engraved with a scarlet dragon pattern. The moment Jin Sanchi held the flag in his hand, his surging imposing aura rose steadily. Whoosh! A streak of light shot from a distance and was instantly caught by Jin Sijia's hand. He firmly grasped the sky-piercer halberd that exuded an ancient aura. Since you don't want to bow down, then I'll make your souls fly away and scatter. I've had this sky-piercer halberd for decades, but I've never let it drink blood. Today, I'll use you as a sacrificial offering. Western Nefarious Sunga's eyes turned cold. His figure violently retreated as he shouted, "You two go first. It's time for this poor monk to take out that thing." Golden Armored Zombie and Shiva glanced at each other, and their eyes instantly lit up. Almost without any words, the duo separately rushed toward Jin Sanchi and Jin Sijia. They didn't care about those people from the strange doors, even though some of them had stepped into the Tao realm and were comparable to cultivators at the Qi refining stage. Tan Xiao, who was hiding in the bushes, immediately converged his aura upon seeing that both sides had begun to fight. He quietly retreated and came to the side of Mo Au and the others, immediately leading them to the hilltop. It was inevitable that they would be affected if they were too close to the battlefield. Given their cultivation, the fight would certainly cause a lot of commotion and would affect a wide range. Help! It wasn't that Tan Xiao didn't think about it, but the existence of the Immortal Trove made Tan Xiao vigilant against Western Nefarious Sangha. He wanted to figure out what was going on with Western Nefarious Sangha. Why did he still harbor disloyalty after he took control of his life, and even promised benefits like medicinal pills? Hiding behind a pile of rocks in the forest, Tan Xiao couldn't help but shake his head as he watched the four people fighting. Even though the four of them were fighting fiercely and seemed to be evenly matched, the moves they used were crude and the number of spells they used was pitifully small. Even the power of the magic tools they used could not be unleashed. What a waste. Tan Xiao secretly shook his head. Whether it was the array flag in Jin Sanchi's hand or the square sky scorpion halberd in Jin Sijia's hand, both were good magical weapons. What made Tan Xiao extremely speechless was that the two of them did not know how to refine the magic treasures. They did not even absorb the two magic treasures into their bodies to nourish them and reach the point where they were connected by blood. Thus, they could control them with ease and unleash greater power. I didn't expect that Golden Armored Zombie's strength would improve a lot in just a few days. On the top floor of the valley in the distance, Golden Armored Zombie grabbed a long blade and slashed at the looming Qim in grand array again and again. Layers of ripples fluctuated in the air. Despite Golden Armored Zombie's amazing strength, he still couldn't break the flag array. Occasionally, a blood-colored dragon would appear out of thin air from the flag array. Although it didn't have a physical body, its speed was extremely fast and still caused a lot of damage to Golden Armored Zombie. On the other side, Shiva looked a lot more relaxed. Although Jin Sijia was using the square sky scorpion halberd to create a powerful gust of wind, Shiva was holding a clay pot and constantly releasing black smoke. Amidst the black smoke, goo insects were looming, and the largest one was only the size of a thumb. The speed of these goo insects was faster than Jin Sijia. Although they could not break the energy shield around Jin Sijia's body again and again, they still continued to consume Jin Sijia's true essence. Raging Flame Talisman! Jin Sijia suddenly shouted, and threw out a Raging Flame Talisman. Layers of flames instantly spread in all directions. Even though Shiva was prepared, she was still shrouded by the sudden appearance of the flames. What horrified Shiva the most was that the goo insects she released were constantly burned to death in the raging flames. Even the black smoke was dispersed by the raging flames. Damn! How come there's a Raging Flame Talisman? Who in the world is proficient in refining talismans? Shiva's linen clothes suddenly fell off and formed a clothing wall to protect her body. She roared furiously while running away from the sea of fire. Crackle! Jin Sijia threw out 4 lightning talismans once again. Shiva, who was running away in panic, was struck by dozens of lightning bolts without any warning. Although she spurted out a green light bead from her mouth and fortunately resolved 50 to 60% of the lightning bolt's power, her physique was not very strong and she was still seriously injured. Bastard! Western Nefarious Sangha, who had just rushed out of the cave, saw Shiva being beaten to the point of vomiting blood. A crazed look burst out from his eyes, and he seemed to have turned into a meteor as he instantly rushed to the front of Jin Sijia. At this moment, a long spear appeared in his hand. The pitch-black spear body looked like it was densely covered with fish scales. The rhombus-shaped spear head was high, and the blade was thin and sharp. The spear tassel was soft and as fine as hair, giving off a kind of messy beauty when it was waved. "Come at me!" Jean Sijia grinned hideously as the sky-piercer halberd fiercely entangled the black spear. However, his complexion greatly changed the next moment. As the web between his thumb and forefinger was torn, the sky-piercer halberd in his hand instantly flew out, while the black spear took the opportunity to pierce his chest. Damn. Jean Sanchi used the flag array to easily deal with golden armored zombie, so he had been paying attention to Jean Sijia's situation. When Shiva was severely injured by Jean Sijia, he secretly cheered in his heart. But at this moment, that pleasant surprise vanished into thin air because Jean Sijia's chest was pierced right at the position of his heart. Eight-sided net, demon subduing bell. Jean Sanchi's ferocious look was revealed as he accelerated the attack of the flag array, constantly wounding golden armored zombie and fiercely shouted. Suddenly, the 8 senile old men's hearts were pierced at the same time. Blood and essence splashed out from their hearts, as they threw out the 8-sided net that trapped the 2 bloodthirsty Chiroptera bats. Clang. A dull bell sound suddenly sounded from the remaining people of the strange doors. The thunderous sound was like a devil's voice that directly roared in Western Nefarious Sangha's ears. At this moment, despite Western Nefarious Sangha's formidable strength, he still felt dizzy and his body instantly froze. At this moment, the 8 nets combined into a big net that enveloped Western Nefarious Sangha. Kill. 8 small jade swords instantly appeared in the hands of the 8 old men with blood spurting out of their hearts. 8 swift and fierce sword chi shot out from the 8 small jade swords and pierced Western Nefarious Sangha's body. Break for me. Western Nefarious Sangha grabbed a porcelain bottle and quickly extracted the holy healing medicine from it. The black spear swept out and tore the big net. The moment his body spurted out blood, he instantly appeared in front of the 8 old men and swept the spear tip, instantly sending the 8 old men's heads flying. One of the old men's head was kicked away by Western Nefarious Sangha, who was controlling the flag array and standing tens of meters high in the air. Humph. Jean Sanchi remained indifferent towards the 8 old men being killed, and his figure flashed with the intention of avoiding the head that was shooting towards him. However, right at this moment, the head suddenly exploded, and a strand of pitch-black poisonous mist exploded out and enveloped Jean Sanchi within it. Impossible. Jean Sanchi was very confident in his own strength, but when he suddenly inhaled a lot of poisonous mist into his body, he felt a chill run down his spine. He was keenly aware that the poisonous mist was actually crazily persecuting his internal organs. Even his blood had been infected by the poisonous mist. The feeling of weakness he felt was as though it was continuously draining his strength. Flag array self-destruct. Jean Sanchi, who had a bad feeling, endured the pain and shouted. As the flag array trapping golden armored zombie exploded, golden armored zombie's body, which was as tough as copper skin and iron bones, instantly became badly mutilated. He spurted out mouthfuls of blood as his body that was flying in the air fell like a meteorite and smashed to the ground. It was a lose-lose situation. Both sides unleashed their trump cards and crazily fought each other, but in the end, both of them were seriously injured. The ones with the most serious injuries were Jean Sijia and Western Nefarious Sangha. For both of them, such injuries would absolutely put their lives in danger if they couldn't be healed immediately. Puff! A bloody light flashed as a sharp dagger was shot out by a middle-aged woman from the strange doors. It easily tore apart the dagger and fell to the ground. Shiva's throat was heavily injured and fell to the ground. His entire trachea and arteries were severed. This sudden sneak attack directly killed Shiva. Shiva, damn it! Western Nefarious Sangha's face twisted. Despite the blood flowing out of his body and his internal organs being displaced, he still pounced on the middle-aged woman from the strange doors like a tiger or a wolf. Like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. The long spear kept lashing out, sending the people from the strange doors flying, killed, or seriously injured. Green snake arrow. Jean Sanchi's feet landed on the ground. The green snake wrapped around his arm was like a sharp arrow that pierced Western Nefarious Sangha's chest. The speed was so fast that Western Nefarious Sangha couldn't react at all. Had he been prepared, Western Nefarious Sangha might have been able to avoid it. But at this moment he could only watch helplessly as he was injured and had no way to remedy it. On the top of the mountain, Tan Xiao squinted his eyes as he watched the situation of both sides suffering. A dignified look appeared in his eyes. Ever since Western Nefarious Sangha took out that long spear that was as black as ink, his expression turned very unsightly because he found that the long spear was not an ordinary magic tool, but a spiritual tool that was a level higher than a magic tool. At present, he could tell that Western Nefarious Sangha absolutely had a disloyal heart toward him a few days ago. He didn't even hesitate to risk his life to expose the immortal trove and this spiritual spear. Moreover, Golden Armored Zombie was also not a good person. It was he who told him that Western Nefarious Sangha was a coward, which eventually led him to spare Western Nefarious Sangha's life. New week, seeking recommendation votes. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.